What's happening, everyone? Welcome to the Season Gaming Bitcast, episode 283. It is good to be back. I am your host, Ainsley Bowden, and we are 3/4 of the way back, but we have a great guest today, so it should be a good show. We certainly missed you guys. I missed chatting with these guys. I missed the audience. But it'll be a good show. We got a lot to talk about in terms
We
of
take a
game
1 week
releases.
break, and Ains always treats it like we've been gone a year.
We've been gone forever, man. I miss
lonely.
Wait,
Ains, are you telling me this isn't Dan?
This is not Dan. No, this is
okay.
This is improved Dan. Still 3 letters, but you know we're raising the bar a bit.
So. He looks like if Dan joined a death metal band.
Is this the roast mode you were letting us
I don't know. I don't know what's happening right now. it already started. I don't know.
I like how nobody responded to Travis on that.
Yep. No, we're 30 seconds into the intro and he's already interrupting with his own interjections. I like it. Sorry. So, Mr. Travis, how we doing, Mr. Roast Master?
I'm good, man. I have a good time. Yeah, happy to be here.
And then when I put him on the spot, he's got nothing to say. You see what
I don't know. I'm trying not to.
Hope coming fresh in his Sunday best. My friend, how we been?
I'm okay. It's been an interesting 2 weeks. Been gaming a lot, been doing a lot of other things. I'm looking forward to talking with y'all.
All right. And yes, I know our audience knows him well. He's been on the channel before, but I believe this is the first time we've had you on Bitcast finally, which is awesome, Jeremy. So, or Carrick, as we will call you, you know him as ACG. Good morning, my friend. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. It has been an interesting couple weeks, and it looks to be an interesting month and a half or 2 months as well. Some of the games coming out, some of the news and rumors. Times are changing, and I actually I adore chaos. It's like my favorite thing in the world. So each day these last couple weeks, I've just woke up, rubbed my hands together, and been like, "Let's check the news." It's been awesome.
It has been wild. We're going to talk about a little of that today. I know we have a lot of games to talk about. Obviously, having characters is awesome because of his channel and what he does. So we can talk about a bunch of the reviews we haven't gotten to. I want to talk about a little game called Balatro. And yes, you're going to hear me rave about that game a little bit today. Of course, we have the Shadow of the Erd Tree gameplay reveal. So I'm going to need about 45 minutes plus for that. We'll talk about the whole Xbox games. I figured it'd be nice to have this conversation with Carrick on the show as well about Xbox games beginning to land on other platforms, what that looks like, and we'll check in with the Halo series as well. I did catch up on that on Friday, so we'll see. But before we do that, Carrick, for anyone who doesn't, I doubt there's anyone watching our show who doesn't know who you are, but I was looking, and when we talked one-on-one, which was a little while ago now on the channel here, I remember us talking about you approaching 1 million subs.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of talked about some of the things that had happened because you should have kind of already been over 1 million, some of the stuff that goes on with YouTube. But I looked yesterday as I was putting things together, and you're about to hit 1.2 million, man. So a couple 100,000 more subs since we last talked. So that's pretty damn incredible. Congrats on that, my friend.
Thank you very much. I have to shout out a pal of mine who literally in the middle of the night, who doesn't do YouTube, contacted me, said, "I watched a bunch of your stuff and I have 3 fixes that will help you." I was like, he's a psychology major. So I was like, you know what? He's either trying to make me quit, and this is a weird sideway into getting me to come to his place so they can have an intervention, or he actually had some improvements. And he did have improvements. It was awesome. He was like, "Dude, do this. You'll see double this. I bet you see triple this." And I did a couple at a time, and they're very small switch. I mean, they're ridiculously small switches, and it exploded from there, and it just kept doing really, really well. And so, I've been honored to be around for a long time and still be around, which we know YouTube is a churn factory of the empty, desiccated skeletons of creators gone by. So I'm very happy to still be alive.
That is very true, well described, but that's awesome. I may have to talk to you after the show about that.
Sure.
SG could always use some help in that regard. But yeah, it should be a good show today. Chat, welcome back. A lot of people commenting, and funny enough, the Game Awards was asking, what's your favorite gaming podcast, and a bunch of people shouted us out, which was really nice. So cool to see.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So let's get. I'm going to knock out a couple of these early super chats we got before the show even started. Take us a minute here. Googleman, of course, coming in hot. Elden Ring is getting an expansion now. If it was on GeForce Now, I could even play it. And Borderlands getting a movie with Bobby Lee in it. Yay!
Yeah.
So yeah,
that is a very Googleman chat.
That is a very
It really
Googleman
is.
super chat. Yeah. 40 minutes before the show starts. Elden Ring, I told you we'll spend probably half the show on that. So we'll get to it. Don't worry about that. Borderlands movie. What are you guys thinking about that?
I think that trailer looks awful. But
Yeah.
hey, you know what?
I like Bobby Lee, but that trailer did nothing for me. It made me scared.
What do you think, Garrett?
I have no buy-in.
chance.
I have no buy-in. I'll give it a chance. I give everything a chance. Hell, I've watched Leprechaun. If I can watch Leprechaun, I can watch that. I don't follow as closely as I'm hearing the casting was bothersome for some. I jumped into the wrong podcast apparently a couple days ago when it first popped, and they were all pretty happy, not in love with it, but they were actually pretty happy with what they saw. So there's sort of differing signs. It's nice to hear that there's a group out there, how small they may be, how underrepresented they may be in their bunker mentality, who were actually a little bit excited for it. But hey, it's Borderlands, and the more of this stuff that gets created, guys, the more I love it. I love fantasy stuff, so the more fantasy things that get created, even if some are bad, that means there's just a little higher chance of another fantasy movie. Or
Cool.
So in a way, I'm still excited even for the ones that I don't think I will like.
Hey, fair
I
enough.
do think that's a good attitude, and I think genre stuff being out there is good. I felt more strongly about that before Netflix went through fantasy and sci-fi and destroyed it all. But the Borderlands trailer is not great for me, but I've had other trailers that I haven't enjoyed that I wound up liking the final product, so I will give it a try.
Yeah. The casting is bizarre, but I think we've all said that.
It is.
It
is bizarre. It is.
Yeah. Googleman, thank you as always. Appreciate you. Don is in the house with the $10 super chat. You guys really got to stop this whole time off thing. We're trying, man. We're busy over here. You are still my girlfriend drive entertainment. So we're your girlfriend and your drive entertainment, or
I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think that's the way that's worded.
No, we know the story with Don. Remember, he got that girlfriend that lives in a different state, and he listens to us on the way.
I know. I was making a joke.
Oh, okay. Well, that wasn't good.
Only Travis is allowed to make jokes.
Are you guys sure it's not the guy who you knew in high school who always said he was dating the girl from the other school?
Yeah,
a lot of
I wasn't going to say it out loud, Don. Or Carrick, but yeah.
Yeah, he drives every week to this other house, and then he leaves it, and they do that scene where they're like, "Yeah, I was at my girlfriend's house, and that place hasn't had people living there for 30 years."
Yeah. I'm in Silent Falls, and you're like,
What?
Do you know what that is, or did you just read that, in some article somewhere?
He's been driving to this boarded up house for
Scio, Oregon, population 2.
Don, glad to have ACG here. Always loved him on Defining Duke, and his reviews are top tier. There you go, my friend.
They are that.
Yes.
And I hate most reviews and reviewers, right, Travis?
Yeah, he does. He does hate me specifically. At least.
Oh man, Don, thank you. Butterball in the house, 199 super chat. Hope everyone
What's up,
is
Butterball?
well. Yeah, straight and to the point, my friend. But I appreciate you. Hope you're doing well as well.
Doing okay.
Rain Man, $5 Canadian. Hey, from Calgary, Calgary Neurology Rehab. Did I mention that Hope potentially saved my life with his stroke story content? Yes, you did. And if you're in rehab, I hope it's going well.
You can't stop hearing about it. Just like, you know what I mean? Get over it, Rain Man.
Other people have had strokes after you. Come on.
Yeah, it's like, come on. How many times am I gonna have to hear about Hoax saving somebody's life? It's like he's taking up.
We get it. Jesus. We understand.
I got reviews to talk about. Okay, I'm trying to talk about important stuff here, and you keep just waxing poetic. Life thing. Jesus,
you got Gollum for $7. There's important things to talk about.
That was only $8 too much.
That's about right. Rayman, hope you're doing well. Hope everything is progressing as it should. And yes, thank you very much. DS with the £2. I got in Helldivers after your take on it. Fabulous game. All right, cool. Glad to hear it. Seems a lot of people are enjoying Helldivers. So
great game.
Yeah, good stuff, man. Thank you. And Midnight Drury, shout out with the season gaming membership, a donation. Thank you so much. As always, Drury, you're awesome. All right. So let's go ahead and get into it. I want to, wait. See, it's been too long. This is why we can't take 2 months off, Hogue. I've already got a comment that's still stuck up here. Look at this. I don't know what I'm doing. We've got Tide's picks, of course, which she went with the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth theme today. And I got to say, guys, we're looking all right.
Oh, I was hoping it was like FIFA.
Oh, yeah. Well, so was I, technically, hoping you did. But no, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Oil paintings.
Yeah. I mean, my shoulder armor is kind of just floating in the air next to my ear, which is a little odd. It's basically Hogue's face just transplanted onto a,
that's just
whatever
how I
that
look
is.
Normally before I.
That's how Hogue.
I mean, top right looks like Queensryche or Tears for Fear. A cover band.
It's definitely an homage band, right? Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
This might be the first week that Dan has looked the best in this. He actually, he looks pretty good. I don't know who my character is standing near where we had to blur the faces, but that's a little scary. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's
Travis doing Final Fantasy OnlyFans,
Yeah, that's right.
There is some S&M looking stuff on the side, so it's possible something's going on in the background.
It's
that
true.
Was that was simmed out.
I do look a little bit like a minor in this photo. I'm the protagonist during the prologue where you get to play his teen years.
As a kid, learning how to pick up the giant sword that like a 57 Chevy bumper.
Yeah, I'm tutorial Travis over there.
But we're not letting Ains get out of being talked about as Cloud Strife, right?
No,
look at that.
It fits. I've got armor, a shoulder piece, and a cloth robe. Apparently, all at the same time.
In a way, though, it looks like you were also a kid, and suddenly, during this, you leveled up in age, but your armor didn't, and so it's all tight and resting on your shoulder. It looks like you dropped a Capri Sun over it, and it just got bigger and dried out in the heat.
Honestly, that
I'm
armor
in my bulking phase, man.
Is that armor supposed to be a gun too, dude? AI art is weird.
AI art's weird. It blow his face off.
He's about to take himself out. Yeah.
Enemy's over there. Boom.
Yeah.
Got him.
It's getting more accurate by the week, apparently.
Ains, you look good as a twink. I like this photo.
Yeah, that is true. You do. Hey,
I mean, there's worse things that have been said about me. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna.
Hogue, this photo is you if you grew up in California. for Hogue right there.
Oh shit. Oh my god, man, you guys are too much already today. I can't handle it. All right, Tide, as always, thank you very much. Appreciate you.
They are great.
And shout out to Ash with gifting a membership both on the SG side and the Hogue side of the house. So thank you so much, Ash. Good to see you. All right, guys. So we've got a lot of games to talk about. One we haven't talked about. Well, I know Travis did previously from a preview perspective, but now reviews are out. It's been out a couple weeks. Reviews came in a little bit flatter, which is Skull and Bones. And I wanted to talk about that just briefly because I haven't played it. I want to preface with that. Alex reviewed this for us. He gave it a 6, I believe. He was frustrated by some aspects of it. I know Hogue and Travis, you talked about it in DMs a little bit. Carrick, I don't know if did you review Skull and Bones as well? There's context there from that look.
There is. You'll never ever hear me answer a question that quietly again in my life. No, I did not. But I did. I was surrounded by people who were playing it for many an hour, so I felt like I reviewed them more than the game.
I will talk about Skull and Bones as much as you want.
Yeah. All right, well, hit us with it. I mean, it came in a little flat. It felt like basically what Alex summed up is that and I know Alex played with you as well, Travis. So
he played with me some of the time. He actually mostly played alone, which is why I think he didn't enjoy the game that much because the game feels terrible alone because it's a co-op game.
Better with friends.
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a second because I've played Skull and Bones primarily alone. And this to me fits into the Diablo slot, right? One of the problems Alex had in his review, and I do recommend people read it because I think, as always, Alex puts his thoughts out there in the review before you get to the 6. It's well understood why he's saying what he's saying. I don't look at Skull and Bones as a story game. I don't look at it for narrative. Right. I look at it as placing you in a world, and it feels very similar to me, as it turns out, to Diablo 4. Yeah. right? Going around to these various locations, having tiny little stories with maybe not a ton of context, with little bits of factioning happening around this world. But I've also found, like Diablo 4, that this has scratched an itch for me. I really like Skull and Bones a lot. Now, I'm biased and tilted towards being a pirate and having these islands and going around the sea. I love that stuff. But I like this game better than Sea of Thieves. I've played it for, I think the PlayStation told me 27 hours in what amounts to 4 days, because I've only been home from my trip for a few days at this point. And I think that Travis's 7 is probably right on IGN's scale, but he is not as kind to it as I would be, and so that makes him wrong.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, I'm actually still playing Skull and Bones. So I have like probably 100 hours in this game at this point. I mean, you can see my review. I gave it a 7 out of 10, which means good, which is a score I stand by. I think the reason a lot of people are negative on it, and you can see a lot of this in the reviews, is people are pretty upset that this game is not Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag Part 2, right? And it really isn't. And I say that in my review, that this is not Assassin's Creed Black Flag, and it is not Sea of Thieves. It actually is closer in structure to Forza Horizon. It's a game where you play as a vehicle, essentially, in an open world map, and it's an RPG in the same way that Forza Horizon is a CarPG. This is a CRPG, if you will. And
yes, I saw that in the article, Travis. You should be ashamed, but I also
I should be ashamed. But and I think once you let go of the idea that this is going to be an Assassin's Creed game without the Assassin's Creed logo on it, and that it's essentially a boat RPG where you play as boats, it accomplishes the boat part well. I'm less excited about it than Hogue, apparently, and I think it's because I do expect a pirate drama in my pirate game. Even if I'm playing as a boat, I want there to be some sort of like betrayal or backstabbing or a little bit of like faction rivalry, and you don't really get that. It's kind of just out of context boat killing. And so that's disappointment to me. The end game is pretty thin at this point. It's basically you have to carry around gold coins to level up your boat. But that said, we are getting season 1 in one day. I think it's like tomorrow.
Yeah,
tomorrow. And I've played some of the season 1 content in the end game preview we did last month for IGN, and so I kind of know what's coming there, and it's got some interesting boss fight stuff, and so there's hopefully going to be a reason to actually do the end game and level up your boat so that you can participate in that. So my plan is basically to participate in season 1, see how I feel, and then decide from there if I'm going to keep playing this game casually, because I don't think it's going to have a lot of runway to keep playing week to week. But if you can hop on every 3 months and play the season content and have a good time, I don't see why not. But yeah, I appear to have liked this one more than most of the reviewers out there. And that that is what it is.
That's okay.
I like vehicle based RPGs, and I think this one does a pretty good job. So.
And I like it more.
I also played it. Yeah, I also played it entirely with friends, which I think was the big change, because I was having a pretty good time with it. And then every time I logged on with Alex, I was like, "What have you been up to, man?" And he was like, "I'm playing alone. I hate this game." And I was like, "Why are you playing it alone? That sounds terrible." I don't. So yeah, I think it really is a game where if you have a crew, it's fun, and if you don't, it can be pretty. It can be.
Travis means a crew as in a group of friends, not a crew for your ship. To be clear,
that's
you're
right.
all boats.
Yeah, you're a boat. You are the crew. In a way.
But I love this game. I think the graphics are good. I think that the growth curve is a fun sandbox. To me, Skull and Bones is doing a lot of things that I want to see out of these type of games. There's always something to go after. You kind of self-select what your mission structure is going to be, so you can get the next upgrade that you want for the next boat that you want. To say, oh, I need to clear those forts. What kind of boat do I need? And there's a lot more strategy in that than I would have expected. And they've implemented a lot of MMO type concepts into their boats, whether that's elements or even classes, right? It'll tell you whether you're a tank or a DPS. And primarily that's based on the perks that you get on your boat. And you can kind of maneuver around those things. So there's build crafting, there's normal crafting, there's operating around a big location and trying to figure out what the best routes are to grow yourself and your boat. In all honesty, Travis, I think part of the reason it got a little bit more negativity than it deserved is I think they flew a little close to the Assassin's Creed sun. right? And I think the original version of this game probably didn't have any of those outposts or walking around bits. And that's what makes it feel like it should be an Assassin's Creed, right? You don't have a jump button, but it feels like you should. And I think that's probably where people are getting the most upset. I like those areas. I like racing for treasure chests against people, and I like getting into the various towns and having all of this interactivity within that space. I even like the endgame stuff, right? I like the smuggling crew. I like the concept that is essentially an Assassin's Creed empire builder that they're going towards in the seasons, I would think. And all of that works for me. But the Skurlock stuff, the actual characters that they introduce, I think are actually too defined, right? When I came to you 2 weeks ago and said I was enjoying the beta, I described it like Sid Meier's Pirates. I think it probably should have been a little less defined than it actually is, because you have these plots with characters that aren't as interesting as Assassin's Creed. You're not an assassin, but it feels like you should be. And I think that's the biggest problem that they have in Skull and Bones, because I think the overall game is well designed, well thought out, and I enjoy it every time I go in, just like Diablo 4 last year. I don't know that I want to play it. I turn it on, and then I'm having a good time, and it's 3 hours later.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
So I guess Hogue and I are kind of outliers on this one because we both kind of liked it. But
There's nothing wrong with that.
I love this
wrong with
game.
that
It's
at
going to
all.
be one of my favorites of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, I go ahead.
I don't like it more than Sea of Thieves, but I do like it. I think it's a good game.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I mean, you know me, I've said my piece 2 weeks ago about Suicide Squad. I having a blast with that game. You know what I mean? It's just everyone has their own thing. So cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Glad to hear it. So that's good. I want to catch up on these real quick because just a couple things real fast. So random name 499 super chat. Love it when I'm able to catch the show live. Glad to have a surprise guest. Always enjoy your review. Objective, I think that is. Objective reviews. Okay. But anyway, for you, Garrett. So another
Thank
shout
you.
out to you.
Just
Very
trying to
awesome.
get Travis to comment. It's just a chat
I'm
designed to see
I'm-
if we can get Travis to blow his lid in the first.
I'm
20
trying
minutes of the
really
show.
hard not to comment, but you know.
reviews. And then thank you, random name, and big shout out my brother, Detective Seeds. 20 season gaming research. What are you doing over there, Seeds? What are you doing,
Thank
man? I
you.
appreciate you. You're out of control. Thank you so
And
much.
I always love when, just like in our Discord or in our podcast, they give out free memberships, and then the people in the podcast get 3 of them. You're like, oh, so you weren't a member of your own podcast.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
see.
Yeah, I give Travis crap about that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What am I going to
Seeds,
do?
like-
Pay to be on this podcast? That's great.
Yes.
I
Yes.
thought we already were.
Yes.
I'm already paying in my time, bro. That's the most valuable
Your
currency I've
time is
got.
not worth $5 a month. Come on.
How
Stop it.
dare you, sir?
If this is your best, maybe you ought to keep it.
Should I bill you at my firm rate, Zanes?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Firm rate.
SG doesn't even make that much ever. So yeah.
Nice.
Seeds, thank you, man. Appreciate you. All right. So obviously one of the biggest releases here very, very soon. Obviously reviewing extremely well. And Carrick, you just put up your review as well. It's Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So I know this is one of Hogue's most anticipated games, which I think goes for millions of other people, of course.
Oh, that's my biggest game of the year. Absolutely.
Crevice
yeah,
crawler.
Yeah. So, Carrick, talk to us about it, man. You reviewed it. What are your thoughts on it?
I did.
Up there with everyone else?
Yeah, and I do have to shout out another game so that it doesn't get lost, which is somebody already pointed out. I was going to say this, but Pacific Drive, because I reviewed that prior. And
It's
the
on my
idea that
notes.
Pacific Drive, or as everybody's now calling it, like Alan Break, because that's what it is. There's so many Alan Wake moments in that game. There's so much, or Pacific Break, Pacific Lake. That is what it is. There's so much amazing stuff in that game that it is. It really does encompass a bunch of genres, which is great. But yeah, Final Fantasy, it was probably the worst review I've ever done in terms of NDA and in terms of tracking and making sure that you're what they want to do. And well, since I've now after 9 years finally broken an NDA in the past, I'm even more conscientious of it. But I was like 3 a.m. and it went live at 6, and I was watching myself for the 47th time, which is the worst experience a man can have, really. It's like watching home movies, and you pop up in an old home movie and you're like, oh God, can we move this? But it's all your home movie, right? So I got that. It went live, and I don't know how you guys deal with this. They'll tell you don't talk to other reviewers, which I do take I actually do take very solid. I'm like, I'm just not going to. But in that game, I wish I could have, to sort of see where they were going, see what their thoughts were, because there were some ifs, ands, or buts there. I did talk to Digital Foundry. I talked to John a lot, and the blurriness, the graphics. So I think that that's something people should be prepared for when you're jumping from a smaller world like the original to this. The actual hardware specifications themselves just become known. You see it. The magic isn't necessarily gone, but sometimes you see a little bit through the back curtain in this game with some muddy textures, some glitches. I had a crash or two, some sharpness issues you're hearing on the performance thing. But getting the graphics out of the way, I can say this. Their ability to handle Final Fantasy and continually change for every Final Fantasy is something that is just really pretty profound. That it's something that I'm actually really impressed. I don't even like Final Fantasy games. I like particular ones. But as a series, I'm not a Final Fantasy series fan. I like 15, 13, I think, 16 somewhat, and then this one. It is a good game. It is a big game. It is a complex to the point of where people might get into it, and especially, I tried to explain this in the review, you start attacking and you start every once in a while, you're going to go, why am I pausing it to go into this menu? Because there's some of them are sort of hot buttoned. And then there's enough moves when you get later on that you're almost always having to go into a slow motion, and they move slow. We're talking like grandma in the morning without the coffee, just so that is nice, but also it's a little disjointed. They add some things which I won't spoil, even though they've been announced in the trailers, but Square can't do a trailer to save their life without spoiling everything. So I don't want to even talk about that stuff. Where it's a good long game that does a lot of service to the story itself and changes some things, but it still feels pretty much like Remake for the most part, with just some added life improvements, quality of life improvements. And you see those, you feel them, and then that added complexity if you want it, and has a cool card game, which it's crazy to me because I'm not a card game.
Hoag's on
always a
board.
good one.
Most card games in these games, I'm like, it's not for me. It's too complex or too simple. This one starts simple, but there's this, almost like if you get a board game, you're doing Twilight Imperium and you're like, my God, this is terrible. But there's one little thing in it where you're like, I like that little thing. And it starts to build from there. And I found myself actually really enjoying that. So yeah, good game.
That's what I'm going to play 90% of the time. Definitely.
I'm clipping your face
right.
out after he said that, Hoag, because that's perfect.
I love a good card game. But no, I'm excited about this one. I haven't played it, obviously, or reviewed it, but I have played the demo, and I really enjoy the front end demo. I do think, like most JRPG demos, and I've talked to Alex about this, the second half of this demo that came out this week is too complicated. It drops you into 4 different synergies and 16 different things for characters you don't know so well, and that always happens to me with JRPG demos. I'm hopeful that it onboards you a little better in the main game, but as far as exploring these areas from this game that meant so much to me and so many others 25 years ago, it was so cool to see it fully realized. And I think this game is going to be as well received as something like Infinite Wealth has been on this podcast, right? Where you have Dan, the Yakuza fan, and Travis and me, the JRPG fans. I think this Rebirth game looks to me from the demo and from the things that we've seen in the reviews as the kind of thing that can really break through for Square Enix in a way that they haven't broken through since I was a kid. And I'm very hopeful for that because Final Fantasy VII and the characters that you see popping off the screen in the demo are so much more well-defined than a lot of the things that Square Enix has brought to the table over the past few years. And I hope that they find that spark again with this Rebirth remake project, because I think they've got that skill set. These games are awesome, but I haven't seen this kind of carried through even in their Final Fantasy series outside of little bits and bops. And even though Final Fantasy 16 was one of my favorite games last year, this is a lot stronger of an effort to me already from just the demo.
Can I interject
of course,
some build on that, guys? One of the cool things that I think you will experience without spoiling anything is a simple fact that it starts bigger. It's got a good dictionary, glossary, index, tutorial list where you're like, I can't remember how to run, whatever. You go into it and you can see that quite easily with video for most of it. But where Remake, I'll just say this, Remake feels like a demo in the amount of not just stuff that's been added, but the ability for you to see the world and experience the world. Remake, I don't know if it ended at the right time or the wrong time. There'll be arguments about that for years. But when you actually get into the open world here and see how big it is and the things that you're able to do, And it's not mini game-itis. It's not the ADD-ridden stuff we see in a lot of open world games. It's like, we've timed it every 42 seconds. Something must be seen. In fact, let me point out something I noticed in my review, because I love to time these. Their monsters have a tendency to be lean, meaning they're farther away than a typical gamer may expect, especially if you come out of some of those more bombastic, here's a bad guy, here's a bad guy, here's a bad guy. You're fighting a bad guy, and a bad guy comes over here. That can happen. But for the first great deal of the game, there's moments of respite that remind me of Final Fantasy 15 with the boy band. Like, pushing the car and sort of hanging out, high-fiving, and while Cloud and all these don't have the same relationship, the game is very smart on giving you moments to breathe. And then when those moments to breathe go away, there is a lot of complexity, yes, but they've given you a lot of systems to take care of it. And it just gets bigger and bigger from there. And it is sort of awe-inspiring. At one point in the game, I remember, because I don't really write a script, I take notes and I think about how I would explain it. I have a best friend, and that's how I do reviews. Is I think, if he's in the room, what would I say? And in that, there's this one point where, the hero moment we hear about in games, where it's like you walk through a crevasse and there's this big spot, and it's like, oh, like Laura has entered the vagina and now she is in the womb of the world. And this one is like, here's 7 of those. And then when you get to the 8th one, you realize that's a vein, and you haven't even got to the uterus yet. Like, it just gets bigger and bigger and more awe-inspiring. And the music is eclectic as hell, but really good.
I love the music in the demo. That's my favorite part of this project, honestly, is hearing those old songs remixed and remastered and orchestral.
They got the weird ditties too, the ones that maybe don't make it into current games anymore, but you got the weird ditties when you meet a character that you're like, what is that funky, yeah, exactly, it is. It's like, it's a little like the porn music that, from the 1980s. You're like, what's happening? And it's great, man. It's great, because even if you don't love it, it solidifies that moment for you. And I saw it in video footage, and I was like, I remembered the music more than what that character said. I remembered, what I heard when I saw him. So
I'm ready. You don't have to sell me anymore.
All right.
Yeah, Hogue is exceedingly excited about this, so I'm happy for you, man. I know you've been waiting on this one a while, so it's good. It's good.
I hated the ending of Final Fantasy VII Remake. And I've only kind of gotten over it in the last couple of years. I think it's essentially as close as you can get to false advertising in this whole project. But I am glad that Rebirth has turned out as well as it has. Seemingly. Awesome. I haven't played it.
I got into a very long conversation with Abantus about Remake being a sequel to Final Fantasy VII.
I saw the tweets, you guys going back and forth.
He was not understanding it. I was just like, and then it turned out after all that fighting that he just hasn't played the original Final Fantasy VII, and I was like, okay, all right, that makes sense. You just don't know what you're talking about,
folks. Yeah. This whole project is a sequel. That's why you should play the original first.
Exactly, they're all sequels, and if you've he needs to go play the original anyway. Nice. I'm excited for this one. I've kept this game at arm's reach. I haven't seen anything of it. I know the reviewer really liked it at our site, but I'm excited to play it.
You don't do spoilers, or you don't do trailers, Travis, either. You try to stay away.
It's more that I just don't have time if I'm working on other reviews, so I kind of just miss it. And then I've seen nothing of Rebirth. I know there's a card game.
Awesome.
Somebody mentioned that to me. That's it. Yeah.
Awesome.
That's
cool.
I've seen all the trailers. I played through all the demo. I actually really like how Square has been toying with people with the trailers. Like, I'm pretty sure I know what they're going to do with the end of this game.
Right.
And they have been misleading as much as possible in the trailers, much like the name Remake. I think the name Rebirth is them being coy again. And I think it's an interesting way to market your video game series. But at this point, if they do what I think they're going to do, I think it'll be great. If they go the other direction, I think it will be great too, because I have a certain amount of trust in what these guys are doing with this project now.
Fair
enough. Cool. Well, yeah, like we said, it sounds like it's going to be amazing for you guys, so I hope you enjoy it. It's good stuff. I was going to segue as soon as Carrick said it, but we're going to segue based off of card game, because I want to talk about this little one-person developed game called Balatro, which has really kind of blown me away.
Is Balatro really a one-person game?
It's made by one guy.
I'll vouch for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, his name is Local Thunk, by the way, on Twitter. So at Local Thunk, all one word. And it's sold over 250,000 copies already. So if you haven't heard of this game, which many people haven't, it is basically take poker and make it a roguelike. And it is very, very kind of easy to understand and start playing. And it is insanely addictive. Like next level addictive. Steve did the review for us at SG. He gave it a 9, a sensational kind of score, and I was like, "What is
his
this?"
review? Is great, by the way. It was what got me invested in the game to begin with. So if you're interested at all from what we talk about here today, check out that review at Season Gaming.
Yeah, that's also the only one I watched was that one.
It says why it's as interesting as it is.
Yeah, it's I hadn't heard of it. He literally DM'd me. He's like, "Oh, I did a review for this little game. It's surprisingly excellent." And I'm like, "Oh, what is this?" And so we put it up. I read it, and I'm like, "Oh, this sounds cool." Because I used to play a lot of poker years ago. I think I've talked about that too. So it even interested me further. And yeah, like just in between like stuff I'm doing around the house, I find myself just wanting to do a run. And you can just sit there playing that game. It's mesmerizing almost. It is crazy.
You can, and there's a lot of goals to hit and things to do like any good roguelike. So the one thing I will add is that people ask me when I talked about this game on Twitter whether they need to know poker. And the answer is no, not really. What you need to know is just a little bit of vocabulary. Flush is all the same suit. A full house is a pair and 3 of a kind together. And after you have that in your back pocket, I think you're going to be good to go. The rest is learning what Balatro is as opposed to poker.
Agree. Big agree. Yeah. And I mean, it's got little, like you can pull up the hands at any time. You know what I mean? It shows you what it is. But it is, yeah, I'm just surprised at its depth, I think, more than anything. You know, when you talk about kind of a roguelike, you expect to do runs and kind of play it repeatedly. But I finally beat my first like full run the other day and got one of the
I lost at the end of Ante 8 last night. It made me upset.
So give me a rundown, if you would, then. What
sure.
At the end of that, you won the game or you won a match?
You basically complete a run. So what happens is there's... Yeah.
It's like in a roguelike
you have multiple decks you can start with, and they have different features. So you get every time you have to basically achieve a certain amount of money with each step of the way, right? So each step has like 2 levels and then a boss level, which has like a unique trait, and you have to do that 8 times. So there's technically 24 things you have to beat, right, to complete a run. And as you go, it gets harder and harder, right? You have to build up more and more. But along the way, instead of just like poker hands, you have jokers, and there's like 120 some different jokers that have all these different abilities. You have tarot cards, so they kind of throw that little adage in there. Then you have celestial cards, and there's all these modifiers basically, right? And you combine all of those together to increase the amount that each hand is worth that you can create from your deck. And so as this escalating kind of achievement of scoring more goes up, you're trying to combine all these different aspects to make your hands more powerful, right? And so it's just continually trying to overcome that next step. And if you complete a run, there's basically, you start the game, I think, with 2 decks or 3 decks, but there's so many things you can unlock. There's like a total of like 10 different decks with different abilities. There's different difficulty levels. There's all these jokers, tarot cards, etc., that you can unlock and combine them all to do different things. So to give you an example, I thought I was really hot shit the other night because I completed my first run. I had a single hand that was worth like 50 some thousand, right? And I totaled like 300,000 in a single instance, a single ante. Yeah, exactly. And so my buddy, who's been playing it a lot, I saw his tweet yesterday. He did 74 million. And I'm like, oh, okay. Obviously, I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm still very early.
Got a long way to go.
Yeah, so it's just
sounds like a country song.
The brilliance of the design to me, right, is that because they have this baseline value of a hand that is chips times multiplier, and then you're manipulating both the chips and the multiplier through your jokers and various other things that are happening in the game, is that you don't have the ability, even though you can look at every aspect of the math, to really calculate how you're doing. You start to get this vibe of how strong you are and when you can skip one of the rounds and when you can need a new Joker or some other aspect of how you're playing. And then you go into these rounds and you're like, I think I'm strong enough. And you look at the math and you're like, okay, I guess that one was worth 25,000 chips. I'm going to need 4 more of those to get through this. And then the next one will be 10 times as high. And you have this gambling feeling within a game that you have aspects of all of the math in front of you. And it's just a really nice design. And every run is different in the best way of a roguelike.
Yes.
Right?
So I guess my
yesterday-
question, I still wanted to just clarify. The question I had was, what happens when you win? Does it go back? Like, do you go home? Is this an adventure you're on and you've won something and then you go home?
There's 2 things. So yeah, when you complete a run, you unlock a new deck, which has different abilities.
Okay.
Right? And
Okay,
you
gotcha.
also unlock a different
It's like
difficulty
Slay the
level.
Spire. Yeah.
So you can do
Okay,
that. But then
alright.
it also turns in at that point, you can continue on an endless run. And so you can just see how far you can get because it's just escalating stakes at that point endlessly. And the numbers just go up and up.
Okay.
Yeah, and they start to get like cookie clicker type numbers on the
right.
on the antes you
Where there's a
have to-
formula to show you how many numbers
It
there
actually
are. Too
does.
high.
It actually
does
does.
it?
It's like
That's always the
it's-
joke, right?
Yeah, like 148 times like 40 E.
I love
know?
it. I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, no,
Awesome.
it's great. And yeah, it's got this vibe of like when you used to play like the old summer games computer game or actually watch this of like pole vaulting where it's like, oh, I just cleared that bar. I'm going to need to get a lot better to do the next round. And there's 100 million different ways to do it. Like yesterday night, I got to I lost by like 9,000 chips, which is nothing, to the last boss of the last ante. And my entire run was just based on this one card that added 3 multiplier for every booster pack that I skipped, which is not something you usually
I love
do.
that one. Yeah.
And so I just spent the entire run buying booster packs to skip them. And by the end of the game, that one card, which was a foil card, so it was adding chips to the baseline, and all the cards can be what they are, or they can have foil or holographic versions, or all these
We're
different
getting in
aspects.
the weeds here. I think we're.
I am getting in the weeds because I love Balatro. So I just kept that multiplier at the end was like times 54. And if you're trying to do, okay, so the baseline is 10 times 2, but you add in the value of the cards to the chip count, and then it adds the 30 for the foil, and then it multiplies by 54.
Imagine
Like all
Hogue
this
saying
stuff.
all of this on a subway. Like,
Well,
just
With
to
a box
himself.
over his head that says
Yeah.
the moon landing is fake.
Yeah.
You know?
Just to
But
himself.
this is awesome
The
because
10,
Hogue,
the times the 30, and you play but you buy the foil so you can skip it.
and then when you pull out,
Everybody's
but
just
Hogue,
like-
when you're buying these, you said you buy if you skip packs that you buy, is that microtransactions or is that just built?
No,
no.
bought
all in the
within.
game.
No, it's part of the game.
No, so
Thanks.
All in the
there's a
game.
number of good choices in the game. That's really what makes it so addictive, I think, which is you've got those levels that Ains was talking about. It's level 1, level 2, and then boss in each kind of round. And there's 8 of those to win a run. But you can skip any one of those that you want, which you usually don't want to do because winning a round gets you money in the game that you use to buy additions to your deck or jokers or things like that. But because they like choices in this game, if you skip, you get some kind of benefit. And that benefit could be a free pack. It could be jokers. It could be multiplying the money that's in your current bank for the
Right.
next time you visit the store. So you're making these choices at the same time that you're playing this game. And it's all just wonderful. And yeah, I might sound like a madman talking about it, but it is really, really a
You sold
greatly
me on it.
designed
I
game.
had no plan on getting it, but
let's go to the next
I'm
box
gonna get it
car,
right now.
sweetheart.
You got to. It's a $15 game. It's on every platform for anyone who's wondering.
It plays
like
great
I
on
said-
Switch, which I like to
Yeah,
mention
I mean-
to people because not everything does.
or Steam
Okay.
Deck for that matter.
Oh, of course.
If you have a Steam Deck,
Steam
yeah,
Deck,
it's
stronger than Switch.
Yeah, I actually wish that I bought it on PC for Steam Deck now because I bought it on Xbox because I'm usually vegging on my couch. But I was like, dude, just to be able to just sit somewhere on my Steam Deck
Hack
and
your
play
Switch. Use Moonbeam. Stream it over. What we
there
do.
you go. But
No, that's
yeah,
cool.
it's
Thanks,
amazing.
guys.
It's amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah, definitely check
Awesome.
it out. And yeah, the dev of it has been kind of blown away. He's been responding to people just like blown away at the response to it. But good for him, you know.
He
So,
deserves it.
yeah,
I mean, it's a really, really smart design. And the motif is essentially a video poker screen, right? It starts with a CRT filter. It uses the kind of classic way a poker hand looks. The
Right.
decks that you earn are not super awesome anime art. They're just like the red deck, the blue deck, the green deck, the black deck of the decks of cards that you could go and you could buy at a local convenience store. So it's a really smartly done game. I highly recommend it. Ains is entirely right. Check out the season gaming review and buy a copy.
There you go.
I'm trying
You
to
sold
get
it better than I did, Hogue.
trying to get IGN to review it. But yeah, I've been playing it. It's good.
Yeah.
I'm surprised IGN didn't review it. Honestly,
It's because
after
our
it became a big popular game.
Our readers apparently don't care about card games, which is weird.
Well, that's just wrong. I mean, we know that.
I know. I'm with you. I'm with you.
I wonder if you feel the same way, Travis. But there's been times where I've said my viewers aren't interested in blog game, and I do it anyway for me because it's my channel. So F off.
Yeah, of course.
And I'll do it, and then find out no, they were into it. They just needed it explained a certain way, and then you end up having people every week asking you when you're going to review the brand new blah 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 for this thing.
I think it's like a generality where it's like, oh yeah, they don't tend to care about this type of game, but then there's always exceptions where one pops off, and you're like, maybe we should have reviewed that. But at a certain point, when a game becomes big enough, you just want to have a review of it. Like it would be weird if IGN didn't have a review of this game. So
I mean, it's on the front of Steam.
Everybody to have it.
Exactly.
It was, like I said, it's a no-name game, and in the first few days, it sold 250,000 copies, which for a tiny, one-person dev game is very impressive. So.
I find it very heartening that a game can do that, right? Like, I had never heard of this. I went and looked at the season gaming review. I was like, yes, please, get me that. And then I played it, put out a tweet that said, this game is absolutely as described. It's all that. Go buy a copy. And I like to think I'm responsible, of course, for being so popular. But outside of that, it is just nice to see a game design that is so smartly done make waves in the game community. I think that this year has been a story of, I love Skull and Bones, right? But Skull and Bones and Suicide Squad, you've got no problem finding out exist, right? Pal World, Balatro, these various things that are out there are nice to see get certain amounts of popularity. Helldivers 2, we think of as big now. It's published by Sony, but nobody thought it would be this as recently as a couple weeks ago. So, I mean, all of these things are very nice to see in a gaming industry that sometimes people think is stale or is failing in some important way. And it's cool to see small teams go out there and make games that people are enjoying and them finding an audience, even when there's 300 games released a day.
All well said. I agree with you. It's a weird comment, Hogue. S1X says, Hogue, funny seeing you here. Don't worry, I won't tell Last Stand if you don't. Is it a secret that you're here?
Yeah. The best kept secret in gaming.
If it is, we're doing it wrong.
I was going to say, Hogue is not new here. That's quite funny.
Yes. I was on Last Stand this last week with Bradley Ellis, formerly of Easy Allies, and Colin Moriarty. So if you're interested in that, Summon Sign went live, I think, yesterday. So they hold it back for their patrons a little while, but then that one's live now. So you can see me talking about Tomb Raider, Prince of Persia, and other things with the gang at Last Stand Media. But you can also see me talking about my appearances on Bitcast and Season Gaming on that show. So just to really get meta, you can just circle around and around.
There you go. All right. What other games, guys? Did you want to touch on Helldivers? I know we kind of talked about Helldivers a couple weeks ago. But yeah.
We should definitely talk about Pacific Drive for real.
Go. Yeah, talk about it because I'm curious. I'm curious about that game. So please do.
So Pacific Drive is one of the weirdest things I maybe have ever played. And I've been playing for a while. It feels like it's from the 3DO era. And it is.
You already sold me.
It's a survival crafter kind of game in which you are in an X-Files type environment trying to survive with the station wagon that is psychically linked to you.
I'm in.
And so you craft doors and panels for your car, and you try to survive with your car in various areas that are kind of rogue designed, that are randomized in various ways, and try to make yourself through a story of scientists that have experimented with forces beyond their knowledge in the Pacific Northwest.
Okay.
While listening to 90s indies tunes. It is
even better.
It is quite a trip. It is a little fiddly, right? So if you don't like the idea of actually having to hit your park to drive to get the car going forward, or you don't like having to jump out while you're being attacked by aliens, and having to replace your panel or your door, it might not be for you. But I think it is such an eclectic and interesting kind of auteurish vision for a video game that I'm recommending it to everybody, because I want to see more of this kind of thing out there in the world.
Okay. Carrick, what are your thoughts, man? I know you said you reviewed it. You wanted to talk about it. Where'd you land on it?
Yeah, so I do think it's definitely game of the year contender for me. If
Nice.
not one of the highest currently. I'll say that it's very easy, especially when reviewing, to sort of just use like whatever random tropish words you remember. It's like whatever it be, gameplay, loop cycle, all that kind of crap that goes out. But the real context that goes on in Pacific Drive is a little different. And it's interesting. And I'm a big old movie fan or old cartoon fan. So sometimes in my reviews, I'll bring those up for the people who are older and who do watch it. But this is a very unique game. Shouldn't say very unique. It is a unique game when you look at how it handles the actual thematic and narrative atmosphere loop. So when you're inside of the building, it's every A-team character working on a car montage you've ever seen. And it's you hammering things in and painting the car and doing your thing prior to an event. And then you go to a map to decide where you're going to go. And there's your like almost like Ocean's 11 moment where you're trying to decide, I can go here, but then that's a second run up here. And you're getting data on whatever. You get a lot of data. It can be obtuse. That's one thing I said in my review is, man, if you open this thing and you're not accustomed to a lot of nested information that might show up twice somewhere else, this might confuse you. And then there's that theme, almost thematic moment. And then you get ready. And that's like from Supernatural, the TV show, where it's like, Sam and Dean. This time it's just Sam leaping into the car, putting everything in there and going on your drive. And then the game shifts to a driving, but really walking simulator. Because this car, even with the upgraded engines, is no speed demon. And you wouldn't want to anyway. You'll destroy the car. And the simulation that goes on, the way the car is connected to you, there's a pet the button in the car. There's a pet the car button, like petting the dog. But there's a little panel you can hit. It's like, I love you. And I joked about that in my preview. And the developers DM'd me and were like, I can't believe you mentioned that because there is something in there. Keep looking. And I thought I would pat the hood or something, like I'd be like, good job. And that would be the animation like you do with a dog. But no, I found it inside. That's also one of the genius, absolute next level bits of design this game hit. You can see the damage on the car, not only in inventory screens, but also by standing outside the car and looking in. So if you need to repair something on the car, you can actually run up to the window, look in and see your HUD, all the damages, a tire's punctured, a little sign shows an arrow at it's immaculate, man. It's
the
so
UI
good.
is great. It reminds me of like a Dead Space kind of thing. It's all in world. You can look at the various things that are happening. You can look at the dials on the car. It's
very analog in that feel.
Because of all that information and because of all that kind of finickiness, I do think it's going to put off some people. It's not as simple as you might hope it would be, but I think it adds to the actual things that you're doing with how specific it is about, this tire isn't flat, it's a little bit loose, so you need a different kit than if it were flat, and that kind of thing. It's very rewarding in that way, but I do think some people are going to be maybe not loving that aspect of it. I love it. Pacific Drive is an absolute winner for me. Check it out right after Balatro.
Yeah, and another cool thing is it's a lot like SCP or creepypasta cop.
So much Control in that. Do you like the vibe of Control?
It's one of my favorite games of all time. Control and Alan Wake is, but that's what it's got. And the greatest part of this, guys, the best part is you're running around. You have to find these anchors, which look like basically Golden Globe babies. I don't know. You grab this thing, you put it in your side door, and of course, as you would expect, because it's logical, it magically allows you to call down like a transporter beam for you to go to. But the moment you do, this magical storm comes. And this is where I said in my review, you have to have your rear view mirrors working, because when you're driving in your POS jalopy that's probably beat up across rocks behind you, that storm is just like coming behind you.
Oh, okay.
And it felt like every action movie last run drive away from something.
Is it like the Evil Dead theme chasing
you
through the
and
woods?
It's just like and it's coming down from the sides, and your beam is over here, and you think you have a straight trek, and then you go up to the edge of something, there's a big valley, and you're like, oh no, you have to rip across the side. And when you drive into it, there is a feeling of real reward on the atmosphere side, not just replicated on the mechanics side. And I think that a lot of games don't do that very well. You'll get a da-da-da-da-da, you won this level, and then that's pretty much it. And now you just have more stuff. That's not the way Pacific Drive handles it. There's a very emotional resonance that pops up if you can buy into those situations. If you care about the mechanical stuff, hell, that's there too.
Oh, it's very much the Back to the Future moment of hitting 88 miles an hour. It does it very well.
And then the car freaks out, starts running from bad things, starts going off the corner, doors are opening because it gets quirks, and you're just like, oh my God, I don't know what's going on. It's like an unruly horse you've trained to ride once when you were young, and I'll give her another go.
It's such a specific vibe. I'm surprised it was made, honestly. I'm thrilled that it's out there. But give it a try. It's wild.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's awesome. Yeah, it was always when they first debuted it, which was a little while ago now, I was like, well, this is an interesting looking game. But hearing you guys describe it is kind of wild. So another one from my list. And to your previous point, Hogue, I love seeing stuff like this. Like we always talk about it. And Travis, I know Wax is poetic about this too, about just creativity and letting creators create. And this sounds like another example of that, which is awesome.
I can't imagine this getting made by a bigger team, right? Like you'd assume a test group at some point would be like, "What the hell are you doing?" So it is great to be out there in the world because, yeah, you turn on like the 90s alt rock music and you go out into the woods in the rain, and it's like, yep, this is its own vibe.
And you find the car via that sound sometimes. If you're out and about, you can hear the music coming out of the window.
Oh, okay.
And you're like, oh, I got to go find my car.
Okay. Oh, so you can get out of the car.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yes.
Major part of it.
Okay.
Is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was like a vehicle thing, like we were talking about with
No, you're slashing, trashing, grabbing everything that's not locked down.
Yeah, okay. It's that's a little bit like Prey. Like you're grabbing everything to recycle it into other things later.
Or Minecraft in that way. You're just
Sure.
That's the survival part of it, really.
Okay.
A lot of inventory management though. Be prepared, peeps. There's a lot of that times where you're like, I grabbed something and I was like, oh, something shiny. Grab that and drop the thing I wanted. I was like, damn.
Oh man. We do have a Balatro poll up on the Season Gaming side, by the way, just as an FYI.
Yes. Hell yes.
What did you ask?
Jackass.
Basically, should you check out Balatro? And I gave him 3 options. Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah. Yeah, those are 3 very different options. What are you talking about?
Did you?
Yeah.
This sounds like managed democracy to me.
It does.
You have 3 options. Me in a mustache, me in a hat.
Speaking of managed democracy, by the way, shout out to the 320 plus concurrent hanging out with us today. Appreciate you. Speaking of that, Helldivers 2, you guys want to touch on it a little further? I know, like I said, we discussed a little bit previously, but I'm not playing this currently, but obviously I've heard a lot of good things.
Helldivers is great. It's a very kind of snack type game for me. Now that I can get into it regularly, which is only a new addition to the game this week, I've basically found that I want to play maybe 2 or 3 missions and then I'm done. So I'm playing it like between Skull and Bones runs, which congratulations, Rare and Sea of Thieves. In my head, I want to call that game Sea of Thieves every time. So that's a marketing win. Helldivers is a really strong case for focusing on a very specific vibe and thing you're trying to accomplish, right? Helldivers doesn't try to do more than what it is, which is drop you onto a planet, shoot some stuff, and then have a lot of fun with kind of fog and lighting and sound effects to make you feel like you're in an action movie, whether that's Starship Troopers or some other action movie, depends on where you land. But it's a great game for that. I want to pop in, I want to shoot things with buddies or randoms for 20 minutes and kind of maybe grow my ship, maybe get some more stuff for the next time I drop in. And that works for me in kind of small bits. But that's, I think, going to hold it back long term, but I don't pretend to be the entire market myself. People can hang on with games longer and in different fashions than I do. So maybe it'll be super popular forever. It's certainly a fun game to play. It's maybe even a more fun game to watch, which can give it a longevity on streaming that maybe they didn't expect or that at this point won't be surprising. But I love it. It's a good game. It's just not going to be on the top of my lists for very long because it's not engaging for long periods of time to me.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of in a similar boat. I put a lot of time into Helldivers. I made some guides for it for the site, and I really, really like this game. I mean, you guys hear me talk about Earth Defense Force practically every week because I love that game so damn much. And this is like a high budget,
Good version of it.
not cheesy version
Yeah.
of Earth Defense Force. Yeah, well, it is cheesy, but in a good way. And my concern with it is still the same that it was when I previewed it, which is that this game is a live service game with not a ton of content in its 1.0 version, and the team has very much not prepared for the live service roadmap. And so you saw the first week after they announced that their game was a huge success, that they just started hiring for getting that live service pipeline up, and that is not the time to do it when people are currently playing your game. So that's going to be, what, 6 months away? I don't know, at least probably.
Well, they had the two major problems, right? Which is that they have to fix things at the start, which they've been doing, and I want to give them credit for that. But that also slows up your content pipeline that, as you pointed out a couple of months ago, Travis, didn't exist for this game. And I can't say that's wrong in terms of investing early. I don't think there's any reason to believe that Helldivers 2 was going to have whatever it is, 200 times as many purchasers and players that the original Helldivers did. But that does put you in a tough position right now.
Yeah, it is tough. I mean, this is the double-edged sword of live service, is that you have to prepare and make content before the game is out, but you also don't know if your game is going to be successful. And if it isn't, you've just wasted a whole bunch of dollars investing in a game that didn't pop. And then if it does pop and you're not prepared, you're kind of screwed. And so with only 2 factions and a lot of the same objectives over and over again, I suspect that probably, mid-March, we're going to see kind of a drop off unless they do something to refresh it. But I hope this game stays alive because I really love it. It's like my ideal junk food game. Like this is exactly the vibe I'm looking for in a co-op game with friends. And I hope that I really hope this one succeeds long term because they have a great game on their hands.
It'll stay on my dashboard as that kind of pop in and play for a little bit game. Definitely.
Yeah, it's very cool. If you're playing it with friends, man, and this one's just like hilarious. It's just nonstop good times. People making mistakes and getting themselves killed.
You talked about Skull and Bones, but Helldivers to me is the game that you do not play by yourself. It is not remotely the same game.
Yeah, I mean, you could play it in matchmaking, I guess, because you're always kind of forced to play with other teams. But if you have them in your ear, it's a lot better. I also like that this one turns your mic on by default. I noticed that people seem to be increasingly turning that off, but especially that first week where I think people didn't know, everybody was talking to one another, and I love that vibe so much.
Reminds me of the old, the original Xbox Live vibe when that was first launching. Like everyone was just happy to be talking to each other. Like,
there was the excitement. Hadn't even got to toxicity at that point. It was like, hey man, I loved it. Where are you? I'm in India. That's amazing.
Exactly. Exactly. I miss that so much. Those early like Halo 2 days and stuff. And oh my God, amazing. Carrick, you playing Helldivers, man?
Well, I refunded it the first time. There are so many technical issues that have popped up, and I'm not necessarily in the same boat as a lot of other people. Checking the SEO, checking the wish lists, it was pretty well known it was going to be really high, in the sales. I mean, anybody who just has like basic SEO suites, you can look at that. And many of us did. Like there was a lot of people looking at it saying that's more like 500,000, like just by tracking those numbers versus other numbers we've seen in past games. This is me as a reviewer and how I review things. So when I buy something, if my movie for $10 stops playing, you be prepared to hear me bitch. And if my book stops, if my anything else stops, and I don't care if we've dealt with it before, that means nothing to me. Sony is the publisher. The fact that 2 days ago is when they finally said they got Sony devs to come and assist them. My job is to just point out to my consumers, at least, my thoughts on it, which aren't objective, they are subjective. But I will say that I've been ultimately incredibly disappointed with their entire handling of it. And there's a game there that's good, and that's even worse. If the game wasn't good, it wouldn't matter. People would get in and be like, okay, and get out. But the number of returns, even in my Discord, is stratospheric. Certainly the highest returned game I've ever seen in the 8 years I've ran a patron. Because we do polls on if you're returning, do you like this game? Do you care? Offline mode, I think I absolutely understand why they don't have one, but I am pushing and have been talking to a couple tech companies about the idea of like, there needs to be something coming on and coming up 25 years of having somebody say, well, I sat in queues in this game. Yeah, well, it's not the same. It shouldn't be the same thing after 25 years. We need to see some improvements in scale up. And they did a tweet which was really detailed about what they did and what they tried. And that's good that they had that tweet, and that's good that they did it. But I was disappointed in its ability to be played as a premier title. Also, I called out Halo Master Chief Collection, which was their premier title, and absolutely just sucked balls. It
Same
was
problem.
one of the most same problem. And so if anybody says, oh, he hates Sony, not only do I not hate Sony, one of my worst rated games of all time was a Master Chief Collection. I mean, I was telling people, even if they fix everything, you really shouldn't reward somebody. This is their main thing. This would be like Mario coming in as a fucking gotcha game. Excuse my language. So I'm very disappointed in that. And it's then combined with the other games we've seen having issues, and some not. Pal World had an issue here or there, but it sort of got up and running. They're paying $500,000 a month for their server fees.
What console you played it on, but yeah.
Depends on what
Xbox,
console. That's the
bad.
other big thing that happened with us is we had a majority of our players playing PlayStation and having crashes during Helldivers. And I can tell you right now, consumers getting crashes on consoles is an entire other beast in another planet on another fantasy world compared to a PC gamer. The ideal to them is to not crash. That's just the way it is right now. They're not accustomed to it. It's happening more often. But when you deal with a console person who's playing a game that crashes, the sounds, the angry sounds that come towards you out of that mic are just guttural noises of an animal enraged in a cage somewhere. And so I want all that stuff to get fixed, and I want the industry to say, we want everything. We're doing streaming. We're doing mobile. Switch 2 is going to be backwards compatible. All this shit, right? If we're getting more, and thankfully people have sex, meaning new people come into games every day, then I don't want a person's first experience. I don't want a person's first experience with a Helldivers to not be able to play it. And I have to explain that in every review I do. Every single review I do, I hear the same thing. Carrick, what's it like? You say Fallout 6 is like 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. But what's it like as 1? Because this is my first one. And that's why in my reviews, I always give context of my book of woe towards a title and a series versus if you're brand new and just got your console. And that extends to the tech stuff. I'm really just tired of the tech stuff. Guys, it's not a charity. It is not a charity, and I'm done with that. I'm done with giving people money for anything that just doesn't work. I mean, I don't mind the occasional issues, but when you have something like this with entire swaths of people just not being able to run, that really frustrates me as a gamer. I want to make sure that gamers get to be able to say if the game is friggin' good. And I have gamers right now that have it after 4 days that can't even tell you if they like the game because they haven't been able to sit long enough and play it. Luckily, the last 2 days have been much better from what I hear. Yeah. So we're on.
Yeah, no, it opened up for me a couple days ago. But no, I agree with you. I think the only thing I disagree with is that I think it's a better thing that the game is good than if it were not. But I think Helldivers 2 has gotten largesse because it is as good and it achieves as much as it does when you're actually able to play it. But I agree that there shouldn't have been this 2-week period of not being able to play it. And especially for a game designed the way that it is, it's a big problem because what you could play for the first even 24 hours was solo. And that wasn't the experience that the game is intended to be. It's not that good. So I agree. And I think there's a lot of places in the gaming industry where unfortunately consumers are asked to basically bear it, and all for the pleasure of having to pay the highest price the game is likely ever to be.
Or 3 days early, right, Hogue? Where they're like premium version 3 days early. You just paid to be a beta tester, damn it. Like,
sure.
what are you doing? You just gave them
money. I'm
on
the Bitcast chat for things like Diablo or other games that had a 3-day period being like, nope, you can't have these errors if you're going to sell those for money.
Right.
But I think Helldivers 2, the $40 price point, the fact that the game is good, has covered it from more of the consternation that you expressed on this point. Some people would say it's because it's Sony. I don't actually think Sony is super affiliated with the Helldivers brand or even with Arrowhead. So I don't see it that way necessarily.
But it's Sony's first attempt at a day one crossplay. You bet they were on the phone, right?
Yeah,
I mean, this is their
I'm
first
not saying
attempt at
Sony
the
was
big
ignoring the
aggressive.
launch. I'm just saying that I don't think in the consumer's mind that this is necessarily they're giving the benefit of the doubt because it's Sony. I think it's because the game was good and then it was so memeable and that people were enjoying it when they did get in, which is a better problem to have than it's junk and it's junk all the way across the board.
There's also
Yeah,
two
for sure.
worlds playing the game. There's the people dealing with the matchmaking problem, and then there's the people like me that have a dedicated group that experience none of those problems because we weren't using matchmaking, right? And so you're seeing some people just like, oh, this game's super fun, while other people are like, I can't get in. How are you playing? You know, because they're using matchmaking. So I will say I know from the preview how close the relationship is between the studio and the publisher Sony. And I think honestly, this is a lesson for Sony, which frankly don't have a pedigree for online games. This is not their wheelhouse, and that's something that they've indicated they want to do more of. And I think, hey, Sony, maybe open betas are great. Technical server
Demos.
test weekends are great. You can do stuff to kind of prevent this or prepare for it.
Prepare to scale.
Yeah. So I totally understand the pain for this one, and everybody has a right to be upset. Even though when it works, it's a great game. I appreciate your pro-consumer stance, Carrick, on this one, because it is how I tried to look through all the lens I try to look through this stuff as a reviewer is, we're on the side of the consumer, the average player, and for a lot of them, it hasn't been a fun path forward, but it's getting there. And I think ultimately that's not the thing that's going to decide the fate of Helldivers 2. I think it's going to be how they support the game after launch. And I'm not super optimistic about that, but that's neither here nor there.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah,
I hadn't thought.
Yeah, we'll see. No, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about a little bit, because we've talked about live service a lot on this show, and I agree wholeheartedly with you, Travis, in the aspects we've talked about countless times, which is, you just pointed out, like, either you're prepared and have things already developed post-launch, or you're not, and trying to hire once your game becomes a success is a recipe for disaster in a lot of cases, because it's going to be a long tail before they get any additional content out. So I'm agreeing with you, where even if the game is really fun and people are really loving it, which it seems they are, and I'm not speaking from experience because I haven't played it yet, but there'll be a drop off there for sure. And
that's not necessarily the end of the world. Sometimes they come back from the dead, like No Man's Sky, or even
Dying Light does stuff
up there
months later. Does their events?
Dying Light, especially original, man. They did
Dying Light
did for years.
I remember
9 years later or something.
Yeah, it was like 8 or 9 years after the original came out, and they sent like a package to my house that was like a thanks for the memories Dying Light 1. They sent me like a package that was like, hey, we're done developing for Dying Light 1, and I was like, bro, that game was like a decade ago. Why are you sending this to my house? And they had like a photo of like all the characters on the back of a postcard, and like all this other like memories.
I felt the same way with Gigantic, Travis. Gigantic was one I loved. Gigantic when it came out, and randomly got an email saying, would you like to try to play Gigantic again? And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? That game's gone. That game's.
They're bringing it back.
What are you talking about?
They're bringing
it back. And by the way,
awesome.
I'm ecstatic for that. Now bring Battleborn back, and we can have a good discussion.
I don't know if we need that we can agree with. Let's get Battleborn.
I'm playing Battleborn right now with the single player mod that a modder made. It's very cool.
No doubt.
Wow.
That's cool.
I loved Battleborn. That was one of the few multiplayer games I really got into. I was the little robot butler hobo guy.
Oh my god,
butler hobo.
Poor Hogue, getting into all the multiplayer games that are destined for the dustbin of gaming history. He's playing Battleborn, now he's playing Skull and Bones. I don't know.
He has to play at 4:30 a.m. exactly his time to get the one guy that's like in India who also has that time frame at lunch to play.
I only stopped playing Battleborn because I would just click to play and it would just go for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And be like, I don't think anybody's playing.
Well,
I know.
I've always had a fondness for Battleborn fans, both of you.
Thank you. 2 of us. Just us.
And they're both on this show.
Battleborn.
Yeah. We found them. This is a Battleborn podcast.
I did not expect this to be the Battleborn chat today, but hey, I'm here for it.
But Travis might be right. If I get deeply into a game that is of a live service variety, you should just figure out ways to eject.
How to evacuate? Yeah,
I'm
'Cause
just
I don't think
Or
it's going
you
to
start
that.
using him as the litmus test for a game that's gonna fail. If you start
Yeah.
to like one, you're like, whoa, let me
Yeah.
note that one down. That ain't
Yeah.
lasting.
Yeah, no, I Battleborn versus Overwatch was one of those things where it's like, I like this game so much more and it's doing so much worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hogue, weren't you really into Lawbreakers for a while?
I was not really into Lawbreakers, but I did give it a try.
Just to mention all the dead games.
When I was at
Oh, that's
an event,
really weird. Yeah,
I think I was
people
at
are gonna
E3 or oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say people are gonna start conspiracy theories about this. Like every game Hogue plays dies. Look, if you look at
Yeah,
it's always
the
7,
law.
you know?
I was
We're
just gonna
always-
say, I think it was GDC or something, but yeah, Overwatch over here and Bloodborne over here, and
Battleborn.
sorry, not Bloodborne, Battleborn. Battleborn had something on there that's basically like, we're gonna kick Overwatch's ass. And I remember standing there reading it, thinking to myself, that is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, you guys are done already, because it will. There's a certain contingent of people will read that even and just be like, that's not the attitude to have. Show, show, don't talk. It's you can bloviate all you want. You have to actually deliver, which is they didn't.
Yeah, Overwatch became one of the highest selling games of all time.
And they became one of the lowest, probably.
Battleborn became a meme, basically.
Yeah.
But where is Overwatch now, Travis? Bring back Battleborn, Gearbox.
Look,
now is the time.
As somebody who never liked Overwatch or Battleborn, I have no horse in this race whatsoever. So, yeah.
I never cared for Overwatch either. I played it for a little while, and I was like, I'm not getting the hype here. Like, I don't understand
if
the love for
Ains
that
and
game.
Dan can pitch for Anthem every freaking week, I can ask for Battleborn.
Bring Anthem back.
Yeah, you guys can both just die on those hills.
If there's a race between those two coming back, Anthem.
I mean, the best part about Anthem is you have that example of a game that's just so bad and poorly done in so many ways. You can compare it to anything live. That's why I want those games live, so I can be like, hey, look at the 15 seconds of, it's already over. Oh,
Anthem. Oh, Anthem. What was I gonna say? But the commentary I wanted to have about this aspect is related a little bit to Suicide Squad, and I don't want to pit games against each other or talk about them specifically, but a lot of people have blamed some of the negativity around Suicide Squad on live service, and I know we've talked about live service a lot on this show, but
that seems accurate to me.
Yeah, and simultaneously we're looking at a game, Helldivers, which is live service and doing exceedingly well, right? And can't keep up with the success. And all I wanted to point out, and I know Travis, you'll have some thoughts on this, of course, is that I feel like live service as a term is just a scapegoat at this point. It's like it's a word that's thrown at a bunch of games to say this is why it's bad, or this is why I don't like it, or have you. And I'm like, live service, quote, games are literally the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like the most played games in the world by far. On a daily basis on almost all platforms.
A lot of them are free.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
but a lot of them are also
true.
good games.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not exactly, but that's kind of my
successful ones are good games. But I mean,
that's my point.
I do think that definitionally we have a small problem, Ains, because
go ahead.
When you talk about Suicide Squad with its content roadmap and its battle pass, that to me feels different than Helldivers, which is a multiplayer game with space for additional content. So that is the live service broad genre, but it's not acting like a live service game as you experience it right now when you can get into it.
Well, it's got 2 season passes. So,
but Suicide Squad, it starts out with a trailer for the Joker before the game comes out. And so it's a different feel to me as the consumer than something like Helldivers. Maybe that's
a bad move. That was a bad move.
I think when people are talking about hating live service, they're talking about the parts of it being a live service game that affect game design or the way the game feels. Because sometimes when you prepare for the game to be live service, you make certain decisions about how the game is going to play. Like, oh, well, we need infinitely replayable missions at the end game, and a loot grind and stuff like that. And I think there's some mechanics built in that people don't like. And when they see that in the game, they go, well, this got put in the game because it's a live service. And they might be right about that. And so I think that's where the live service scapegoating happens, is that they say, well, there's these specific game design aspects I don't enjoy, and they seem to appear a lot in live service. Suicide Suicide Squad has them. Wouldn't it be a better game if it didn't have them? And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that opinion.
Sure.
You can totally believe like the game would have been better if it didn't incorporate some of those elements. But what I don't like is people just saying it's because it's a live service that's a problem. That really does vary case to case. Some people design their games around live service and that benefits it because it means that they open themselves up to additional expansions. They kind of, Helldivers is kind of a great example, right? Diablo, I would say, is another great example of like, well, they built it around live service and that was to its benefit because you get to play this game that is constantly expanding and refreshing itself and has a life beyond its initial launch. And I think that stuff is cool. But yeah, there are bad live service games, but to our point in the chat, Ains, when a single player game fails, nobody goes, oh, wow, it's because it was a single player game. If only they had made a live service game, it would have been successful.
Right.
And I just don't think it's a very fair thing to say, like, anytime a live service game fails, that it's because live service is bad and the model is failing. That simply isn't true. If you look at the statistics, that is not true at all. And also it's just not a very fun discussion. Bad games are bad games, regardless of the model that they employ.
Right.
There are plenty of bad live service games. You will get no argument from that from me. And I think some of the games could have been better if they weren't live service and they focused their game design efforts elsewhere. And I don't know if Suicide Squad is one of those because I have not played enough of it. I don't really have an opinion there. I agree with your sentiment, certainly, Ains, that people scapegoat the model, and I don't think that that's really fair. But there are certainly some games that were made worse because the team just focused too much on how they were going to make it a live service game, and that you never like to see their plan as you're playing the game of like, oh, well, they did that because of their plan for this, and then suddenly you're thinking about the model of this game and its future rather than just having fun playing it. And I don't think people enjoy that very much.
Yeah, the mechanics should be the focus, right?
I agree with a lot of what you said, but I disagree with something significantly that you said, which is that people don't complain about the single player model. This is a little bit more prevalent a decade ago or so, but a lot of people have consistently gone into single player games and said this would be better if there were co-op. This would be better if there were a multiplayer element, right? As a game, not just a business model. And so I do think that happens. I think that's how you get Assassin's Creed Unity. And I think there are game types that work better as single player that aren't enhanced by having to accommodate 4 people, right? You get hallways that are much bigger. You get spaces that are differently designed. And I do think that there are folks out there saying single player is not the best way to make a video game. Just like they say live service is not the best way to make a video game.
I actually remember that era where people were saying that a lot more. So I think that's kind of died down and now live service is the bad guy, but this sort of changes from decade to decade where like, what's the thing that's going to kill gaming? It was microtransactions for a while and people realized that wasn't that big of a deal. I remember it was DLC, just like the idea of having an expansion people were opposed to for a while. So yeah, there's always like been a scapegoat, and right now it's live service. But let me tell you, somebody who plays a lot of games, and many of them which are bad, there are bad games of every shape and size you can imagine, and sometimes they look like Suicide Squad, sometimes they look like a single player game that I don't know. Testament Order of High Human. Let's say that was a game I reviewed last year. 2 out of 10.
Why are you being so mean to Testament, huh?
It was so bad. Have you played it?
No,
you should play it.
Not.
Well, no, you shouldn't play it. But yeah, I mean, just like it would be funny if you did, but you shouldn't do it.
I remember your rant about how bad that game was. It was epic.
That game still haunts me.
But I do think that there are elements out there, not just consumers, but actually in the critical class that go out to a game like Suicide Squad and seem to have something in for it, right? That you see things that say, oh, if WB hadn't been so stupid and chased after the live service dragon, this game would have been a real winner, that kind of thing. Yeah. And when the critical class is talking about that, when the folks that are representing, the scores and the aggregators and are in some developers' contracts, I do think that matters with how these games are developed and received.
Yeah, so I'll address that because I think there's 2 things happening. There's one, people reviewing Suicide Squad and maybe not liking it, and I think a reasonable mind can play Suicide Squad, and regardless of what I think of live services, just go, I don't like what this is. Yeah, and I think that's what happened with the IGN reviewers. He reviewed it and he said, I don't like this game. period. And then there's a separate thing, which is when you are disappointed in a game, you think, well, what could they have done differently? And I think a lot of people are going to the very obvious, like, well, they could have just continued down the road of the Arkham game and made like a more single player focused, not a live service game. And that speculative kind of backseat game developing is not something I'm a fan of, but I get why people do it, because if you didn't like the product, obviously your first thought is, well, what should they have done to make it a little bit better? Every critic does that. Every consumer does that. It's totally natural. And you know, me personally, my methodology is if I don't like a game, I just stop talking about it, because I don't want to be a guy.
In your opinion?
Yeah, in my opinion, I don't like to be a guy who who promotes a lot of negativity, because it's easy to be perceived that way when you are a critic who sometimes has to give harsh reviews. But not everyone at IGN is like that. So you see some of the people, the Ryan McCaffreys, who's largely not really a critic guy, right? He does previews.
For the record, I did not say the letters IGN, but
sure. But I'm saying IGN because I know a lot of people are talking about us right now. And I just think
I just want to be clear. I didn't raise IGN specifically.
Yeah,
Nor did I.
I get it. But a lot of people are kind of looking at that of like maybe a bias against live service games. I don't think our reviewer had that. I think if it was a good game, it would have changed his mind. And that's the problem. That's the thing with games, right? They have to sell you on them. They have to convince you that they are good. And if they're not good, then the first thing you're going to wonder is why it didn't turn out the way you were expecting. And Suicide Squad seems to be a very divisive game. Some people really like it and some people really don't. I will say my coworkers seem to really not be liking it, from what I can tell. And so that it is what it is. Some people aren't really. I like Skull and Bones, and most people don't like that game. So
I was going to say, again, I wasn't trying to specifically focus on Suicide Squad, but just the larger conversation of live service.
But I like Suicide Squad quite a bit. I actually think it has a similar version of the Skull and Bones problem, right? Because Skull and Bones feels like an Assassin's Creed often enough that you start to wonder what it would feel like as a full Assassin's Creed. I think Suicide Squad does a lot of good designed quests, does a lot of good character work, and a lot of cutscenes where you have to wind up saying, what if I weren't just protecting a bus and fighting enemies and saving randoms in a small circle that is clearly designed for a multiplayer or endgame content, right? Like, so I think that they did it to themselves with that design that flies so close to the sun. But I think that it gets a bad rap because the game Suicide Squad is better than a lot of review sites and critics have given it credit for. And I don't think that it's reflective of the actual experience that a lot of people have playing the game. Now, I said this before on the IGN review. I actually like the words on the page of the IGN review. I find myself nodding along with a lot of the criticisms that are said there and a lot of the problems that specific reviewer has. The only real objection I had to that review was the 5 did not seem appropriate for their own grading scale.
Yeah, I could see that. And again, I get that every single review I post, they go, oh, this reads like an 8, and then the next comment will be, this reads like a 6. And then the review will be like a 7. Right. So no matter what I do, it seems like people kind of disagree on how our writing, that this is something we actually talk about, reviewers. And I'm sure Carrick deals with this a lot, is the words that you use and your overall tone and the things you focus on. I'm a critic who tends to talk a lot about the flaws of a game, and unfortunately, something I could work on is talking more about the things that I loved when a game is good. But I tend to focus on like here's its shortcomings, and everything else is good, So
I thought you focused on squeezing in as many puns as possible, Travis.
I also do that, especially if it's a pirate game. I don't know why. I can't help myself. But
folks, if you haven't read Travis's Skull and Bones review because you're not interested in the game, that's more power to you on that. But you have to read it because he has the most puns per capita I think I've ever read in a review.
Yeah, I did go really hard on that one. But sometimes reviews read negative and the score is higher than the person actually enjoyed it more. And I think Suicide Squad maybe has the opposite problem, where our IGN reviewer wrote a review that maybe didn't harp on the negatives as much as you'd want to reach a 5. But that's more kind of an editorial problem of like, what do you include? And also, we don't know what got cut from the review. Sometimes you make cuts for brevity's sake or whatever. I mean, people have opinions. I don't think that reviewer's opinion was particularly bombastic or crazy. So
I like the review of Suicide
enough.
Squad in writing at IGN, and I like the
Yeah.
game. So you guys can check it out. I think it's well done. But
I also
Yeah,
gave Gotham Knights a 5 out of 10, so maybe he was just copying me.
I do think
know.
Suicide Squad is a better game than Gotham Knights. I
Wow,
will
and you
stand
liked
on that
Gotham
hill.
Knights more than me. You did.
I
I
did.
remember that. Yeah.
I think Suicide Squad is a better game than Gotham Knights, pretty definitively.
Nice. So, Carrick, we've touched on a lot of things here: live service, review model, different opinions on kind of anecdotal perspective, right, of the gaming audience and where they draw issue with certain games. You want to touch on any of that?
Yeah, 3 points. I think the first, and I did a video about this a couple weeks ago, just because PR people and a lot of the devs I talked to have been starting to state this, that you should certainly expect to see live service as a term being altered as we go forward. And I got to sort of sit down and read some documents of ideas, transforming world, all the stuff we all know. It's just synonym, right?
Yeah.
But there was a lot of ideas of adjusting the world, especially when you see Subnautica, and those guys sort of got hammered for saying, that theirs was going to be a service game, and then had to go back and be like, no, it's not. We just used, an improper term for it. The term is pretty hot. And I think changing that term is important, or offering a couple different terms, if that allows people to go into a review or go into a game with a little bit more of a clear mind. Nothing wrong, I think, with a particular amount of time where some words are hot. That's the way it was. I grew up when, free-to-play MMOs they were considered trash beyond belief. And I was early into liking them. I was like, some of these, I'm getting $60 out of this game before I'm buying, a pair of panties for the character. This is ridiculous. Like, I'm getting so much time out of this. And that is what I rate on, is time and investment and what I'm getting out of it. Sure. The other I would say is moving forward. So critically, I think there's nothing wrong with stating that you dislike this game because maybe it doesn't bring stuff you expect from the genre forward that you saw in other games. But I do see the biggest thing, and it is why I started reviewing, because there was a couple things I noted that were gaps when I started reviewing that I was like, I'm going to hit this. Sound, music, and voice were 3 that I was like, why is everybody buying OSTs? But best review would say this music is, huge or bombastic. And I'd be like, what the fuck does that mean? That means nothing. It's not talking about anything. So, and then voices, you've got these huge podcasts with voice actors and we're celebrating them, but people would be like, voices are okay. This guy plays this character. More of a live journal than a review of how those voices hit. It's more of a live journal of this guy started talking, and then I realized it was, this person. And so I think that it's important to add as much context in the review as possible for why you dislike something. So if Travis goes into something and he's a type of person who has a tendency to lean more on what he didn't like, because maybe his idea is, the expectation is it's good, so the stuff he didn't like brings it down. Then there's other people who play games where they're right in the middle and they experience the game and they decide if it goes up or down. And I've seen a lot of reviewers who say they start at 0. They sort of start at, this is offering me nothing, and then as I play it, it rises up and up. And everybody's got a different idea for that. For me, it's about adding context. I don't script. So he does a lot of puns. I do a lot of analogies. Get shit about it all the time. And I'm like, analogies work for me. I say stuff like I'm explaining to you guys. I do say this stuff about people having sex every day so more kids are born and entering, because it sounds funny, but it works. Every person I've ever explained that to will go, oh, damn, that's actually right. I hadn't thought about that. So I think those are really important. But I also do think a big thing is just reviewing what's in the game. That's huge to me. And reviewing what's in the game, not necessarily what's outside of the game, as a major impactor. So I'll review what the game gives me for the cost. And I will certainly admit, hey, I wish it had this. I wish it had that. But it's very easy to start a review stating, I wish it had this. And then that's in your it's up there in your brain pan through the entire talk. And it can seed out into the narrative a lot. I also have a tendency to play a lot of bad games on purpose. Because for example, one time I said this, I said when I broke embargo, but it said like Redfall's the worst game I played in 2023. It was an early game, so that's possible. But most of the time, the games you guys have heard of are not the worst game I've ever played, because I've played some shit games. I mean, terrible. And it allows me to reset my brain to what truly bad is. And I think that some people either don't have time, but I would love to see more people do that, because even the big reviewers I talk to have difficulty doing that. And it's like, you should see what somebody's asking for 40 when this game your game's 40 and this game over here is 40 and it is trash. It's a dumpster fire. It doesn't even work right. This, all these kind of things. I wish there was more of that, because that would also, I think, solidify us a tiny bit closer to the consumer who does sometimes play those.
Yeah,
and
Travis
not
talks
a
about that
reviewer.
a lot, honestly. Yeah.
Bro,
not a reviewer
speaking
who's
my language
yeah,
over here.
who's getting tops. Yeah. So I
hear people say like Starfield is like the worst game ever and that it's like a 3 out of 10. And I'm like, bro, you have not played actually bad games.
That's actually what I say in comments, because I will respond in comments, and I'll try to be nice. But when somebody says that, I'll be like, you just need to play more games. Like, I would love for you to just play more games. I think that would solidify you into the idea that there's other things being offered at different levels. And when I say the voice is good and somebody says, no, it's not, I'm like, okay, let me explain to you 10 other games where the voice is terrible. And then you can identify with me. Now, we all have what we played. I think that's some context. I'll make sure if I jump into a later series and I haven't played all of them, I always like to make sure people know which ones I have played, because I think that's very telling. And a person can sit through it and go, okay, Carrick just said this is the first one he's played. I at least know that. But I also love to add the freshness of somebody who hasn't played. And I will try to point out like, oh, you guys may be accustomed to tutorials that don't pop, but I'm not. This is my first one. So this is weird as hell. And to give you an example of why this reflection, I can't wait for it to just explode everywhere, is Elden Ring. The number of people I know who played Dark Souls and hated them and then played Elden Ring changed things up. But if somebody were to say it's a Dark Souls-like open world game, people be, nah, I'm not playing. And so it is that, but you can explain why
that would turn them off because of
exactly. And it did turn them off. And the only way I know in my review, I had so many people. The very first comment was like, the way you explained the first section, you go out and you see the opening, made me feel relaxed instead of stressed, because every other, Dark Souls is through a vagina-like tunnel where you're just getting hammered. Guys are like, I've got a spear aimed at your face and there's a trap behind me and you have to go through. And you're like, what the shit? So new gamers are just getting smoked. So that's why Elden Ring's had the success too. And then we liked it, which also doubly helps. But I think this is all really good thoughts. Everybody does it differently, but dude, context is what I miss. And I still miss it. And I don't try to watch a lot of other reviews on games, because I'll get frustrated on something. I'll be like, I don't understand why this couldn't have just been explained like 1 second more. And I'm sure people listen to mine and do that. But I think the more context we add for everything, that's why I have fun factor in mind, where I'm like, I end the review and say, here's some fun. Here is what makes any problems or whatever. Here's the juice of this game. Here's the moment that you're going to walk up on top, get through the shit that you didn't like, smash somebody over the head and be like, this is what I like. This is why this game is fun, and not just that it's fun. Because how many times do you read a review or listen to a review and they're like, this game's fun. You're like, okay, what? And they're like, and I'll give it an 8. And you're like, well, dude, that doesn't explain what was fun about it, because maybe I won't find the fun.
You're talking about Steam reviews?
That you
That's
found.
like all Steam reviews.
Steam reviews just say no Chinese translation.
Yeah.
Hate it. but yeah.
Well, now that you've called on Elden Ring 3 times like the Candyman, before Ain starts on a 40-minute rant, I did want to squeeze in one Hogue note here, because I think it's important. My favorite game of all time, and this is a game that will help inform you for the other games that you play, regardless of whether you're talking to Jeremy or Travis or me on these things, is Star Control 2.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Star Control 2 had its source code released to open source at the start of the millennium, 2001 or 2 or so. And for the longest time, people asked me, what is that game? I'd like to play it. And I would send people to the website that had the source code and you could just go play it. But for those of you that weren't comfortable with that, I know there were a lot of you, a company has put together a Steam access point called Free Stars that has the game Star Control 2 combined with some of its voice acting and making it more available to you if you don't want to get into a DOS box prompt and all those things. And it is available for the low, low price of free. So please go check out Star Control 2. It's called Free Stars, the Urquan Masters. And I will appreciate it, because then you won't have to look at me like I'm a crazy person for saying Star Control 2 is the best game of all time. So please go check it out. This was when sandboxes weren't just limited to open world, but were in fact open universe. So go enjoy the best game of all time, folks, for free on Steam.
Travis, he started this spiel by talking about me, constantly talking about Elden Ring,
Yeah.
and then
he brought up a
wax
game
poetic
from 20 years
Star Control.
ago that he brings up every week. Yeah.
I wish it were 20 years ago.
Good deflection, though.
It was.
He's like, I'd love to add to what you're saying. So this game I love, and you're like,
Yeah.
wait, what?
I
Exactly.
was trying to get in before the Elden Ring Scourge came about. We're gonna get 40 minutes of a trailer.
Scourge! How dare you, sir? How
The
dare
Scourge
you?
of the Erd Tree.
Oh man!
Damn, I love it.
I know, Carrick. I should have asked you before you came on the show because doing this live is a mistake. But what are your thoughts on Elden Ring? Where do you stand on that game?
He just
My
gave
thoughts
us his
on-
Elden Ring thoughts.
Yeah, my thoughts
talked
on
about
Elden Ring
vaginas
is that.
again.
I did. That's fourth reference on vaginas, I'm
Yeah.
sure. Fifth now. But I would say that.
More than my channel's ever seen before.
Yeah, I
One
feel
of the-
like somebody needs to teach Carrick about hallways because he seems
Yeah.
to think vaginas are the only narrow passageway, and I want.
Hey, you don't have my dating history, bro. Calm down.
Okay, got it. Yeah, okay, makes sense.
So there's a lot of enemies in there. So when you're going, what was great about that game? When I was describing it to a pal who hated Dark Souls, he had tried multiple times, and I
You
remember
say
that.
pal?
I
Do you
think
mean friend or Pokemon?
friend, not a pal world.
Okay, got it.
But a real friend, and he
Got it.
was having a lot of difficulty. And when I asked him what the difficulty was, he was talking about going around a corner, and there was like this locked-in area, and there's really nowhere to go. I tried to get him to play Neo 2, same thing, right? There was Neo 2 a little bit easier, and so I just basically explained to him that a moment of rest, a moment of respite, a silent, just solitary moment of being able to walk out into that open space in Elden Ring and look down the grass and see. They had done it quite easily. They had basically 4 channels, if you look at it, a little like a League of Legends kind of thing. They had 4 channels, places you could go. And they had, I think in one place there's nobody, one place some flying creatures, one place the guy on the horse, and then the other place maybe some warriors. And I told him, the one thing about this game that's just different is that you can engage and get away without being stymied by close quarters at this point. And as a martial arts teacher, so I teach martial arts all the time, one of the things you will always hear from a student is, and you hear this normally, but you get an analysis paralysis. You get a situation where the student can no longer learn because even if they're doing the same thing over, their brain is like an electric fire. There's just nothing going on. They're mindlessly doing the same thing. Sometimes you need a moment to sit back, like a person needs a bit of sleep to get short-term memory to log in. And that's why I think Elden Ring worked for a lot more people than even I expected, where they were able to touch a bad guy and go, whoa, that was not for me. But you know what? I have another choice. And with different choices at the starting, that was, it was just, I can't say it's a masterpiece idea. It was a good idea. It was a smart idea to do it. You could attempt and die, and you didn't have to say, I have to fight the same guy again. You could say, I could go left now. I could go far right. And just those small amount of choices allowed for, and the travel, the walking to it, allowed for moments for the brain to go, did I hit bumper? Because guys, I've played almost every Dark Souls style game and a whole hell of a lot of fast games. And there are times where you don't even remember what button killed you. It happens all the time. You'd be like, was a controller plugged in? Like, I don't even know what was going on right now. And so that game gave that moment, just that moment of time for a player to sort of say, okay, I tried this. This time I'm going to try this on this guy, and might try that and die, and then can switch it up. And it worked so well. And it was such a magical moment for me personally, because Dark Souls were difficult for me to get into, but as a reviewer, I felt I had to. And I had to go through some crap ones and some good ones. But when I saw Elden Ring, the difference was so instantly noticeable that anybody who had played past ones, anybody even talked about, even Dark Souls guys on Twitch beating it in their underwear, they all say the same thing, is that it's instantly noticeable that parts of it are different, and a lot of it is pro-consumer towards getting them the understanding of what they may need and what they can do. And that's something prior ones sometimes have not done. And I love that. I just absolutely hats off to those guys. They did phenomenal at that point.
Super well said. Seriously. Super well said. It's something I've talked about with a lot of people. Obviously, like, I reviewed Elden Ring. I talk about it all the time. That's a running joke. But I love the Souls games, and so many people kind of came to me on our Discord and Twitter and different areas asking about Elden Ring. Should they play it? They didn't like the Souls games, this type of thing. And, I have stressed many times the things that you just did, which is it has all those mechanics. It has more mechanics than any of the other Souls games, but it has all those same type of similarities. But because of the nature of the way it's designed, it is far more accessible. And actually, Travis and I joke about this, and I don't mean this in any type of connotation, but it's actually a lot easier than some of the other Souls games for that reason.
Absolutely.
Here we go.
Yeah, for that reason.
It really is. I mean, it just is.
easier. Yeah.
This is Travis dropping in and saying, I fought a dragon in the first 2 hours. What are you doing, Ray?
Okay, that part was just me showing off, but it is easy for like the average person. Right? Yeah.
But no, exactly what you said. Like I legitimately, I think all four of us, well, Travis is a little younger, but still obviously has played a million games. So all four of us have played tons and tons of games in our lifetime. And the Elden Ring moment, especially coming from the Souls background, as you just described, the Elden Ring moment of stepping out into Limgrave and seeing that world and the way that design had evolved is one of the things I will always remember as someone who adores video games. It is a staggering moment of that game. And anyway, I won't go on my.
Can we also
rant.
just real quick point out, though, that it is nice because that also means those people who couldn't get in have gone back to the other games. Because the person I was talking to who beat Elden Ring went back to Bloodborne and played that, and went to Surge 2 and played that. And it was like, it's just sort of nice to see these guys. I loved Surge 2, but I don't think it rated well. Did it rate sort of poorly, I think. I guess.
Surge 2 did better than 1, but it just
Dude, you're taking people's body parts to your house and bolting them on yourself. You can't tell me that's not the coolest thing.
I liked 1 as well, and I felt like 1 was
so did
underrated.
I liked 1 as well. It was like a maze, Warhammer 40,000 a little bit, dark maze of just constant bad guys, and low, or what was it, vertical and horizontal versus high and low was a very different feel to attacking than
it was very cool. Too. Yeah,
very cool game.
Cool kill in the chat. What's up, man? Elden Ring.
Why are we talking about Elden Ring? And
because it's Elden Ring. Do I need another reason? What's wrong with you?
Yes, you do need another reason. Anything happened this week?
Anything happen?
Yes, something did happen this week, and I'm
gonna say this before we get into this. I have intentionally not watched the trailer, so I know that the expansion got announced. But
it's fine. I've watched it like 5 times, so I've got enough for you. Yeah, and actually, I want to point out that I was not the one that segued to this because on our run of show, I had something else before this. But
I know.
I'm blaming Hogue.
That was Hogue's fault. We're here already.
Or my blathering. I apologize. You blame him on a guest. I won't be around. People can just bitch about me while I'm gone. And be like, yeah, it was him. Never.
I like Elden Ring. I've said this a number of times. What I don't like is living in the universes that FromSoft puts in its Souls games. I just don't love that weirdness. I don't love being in.
Boom. Agreed.
The lands between or the various places in the Souls series. So I actually prefer the Surges of the world. I really liked Liza P. I like the different universes. I just didn't love where the FromSoft games take you. And Elden Ring is just kind of a weird place to live, but I do like the game a lot.
Yeah, true.
I'm trying to think of something I wanted to say about you, Hogue, but I'm going to keep it nice today.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I like that really meek.
Okay. No, but seriously, so Shadow of the Erdtree gameplay trailer this week from Bandai Namco and FromSoft. It's about a 3.5 minute trailer, shows an awful lot. If you're into Elden Ring, you're into the lore, you understand the story, it shows an awful lot. In fact, Vadi, who is obviously super well known, right, the Souls creator, he did a video on it. It's like a 30-minute video on a 3-minute trailer because of how much it shows.
I have heard that. I think the best part of that, and this works for a lot of trailers that are well designed, is that it meant basically nothing to me. It looked shiny, but it didn't like reveal anything to me. Not to you.
Well, I mean, you're like 5% of the way through Elden Ring.
I told you. I always get to like the second area and then I stop.
But yeah, it looks fantastic. It's coming out June 21st officially. And basically some of the commentary around this. So Miyazaki in interviews in Japan. What?
June 21st.
Yeah.
Is that related to
we should get to that, by the way.
I think that's the final shape day. Oh, God.
These schedules are bad this year already.
Yeah, it's going to be rough. But essentially what they said is that this expansion is the other side of the world. There's a lot that ties into lore I won't spoil or even talk about here. But the expansion itself is going to be bigger than Limgrave, which means it's probably going to be about, a very chunky expansion. It adds a ton of weapons. It adds weapon combat styles, and just an awful lot to it. So super excited about
It's
it. June
pretty
21st.
expensive, right?
It's gonna be a $40 expansion. Yes. And
That ain't
me.
nothing.
Nope. Well, I've already ordered the collector's edition, the helmet.
I'm sure there's
everything.
a statue on its way to you, Ains.
There will be for sure. But yeah, it looks fantastic. A lot of us who are obviously very into this game are waiting for the gameplay reveal, right? We've known this has been coming since last year, but this was a moment, and this will by far be my favorite thing of the year. Nothing will probably even come close. I've been playing Elden Ring again, and it's I don't know. It's something special.
I will say the release of the trailer did encourage me to once again pop into the first section of Elden Ring and then stop in section 2. So
nice.
I'm on my way.
Went in, you were like, game still works. Bye. It booted.
I just wish I could get you to experience that whole game somehow. I don't know how.
Multiplayer. We would have to clear our schedules and be.
I don't enjoy it when people just roll in and beat bosses for me. That's not.
We don't beat bosses
either.
We hang back. We watch. We observe. We are silent guardians.
By the way, the first area is not like the first little blip. It's not the tutorial cave. I get through the castle and then I stop.
Yeah, that's.
That's the first area.
That's the first area.
Yeah, because again, I don't think the scope of that game does not become clear until much later, and it is grander than anything you expect.
Grander.
Yeah.
I mean,
check on the word grand.
I think usually I when I get approached by the giant hand is when I say, you know what, I actually am out on this lore. So that tends to be what happens with me. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just telling you how it is.
Of course. Yeah, of course. But yeah, anyway, June 21st. So we'll see. I hope to be reviewing it again. I will hope to be updating my guide, and obviously I will talk an awful lot about that when it comes out. So, but we don't have to stay on it much today. That's about all we know right now. I will say I've seen a lot of people now getting into Elden Ring, the people who have been waiting or whatever. So if you're not aware and you're into this sort of thing, they did create Future Press, who, in my opinion, creates the best guides, physical guides. They created a double book guide for Elden Ring, which is absolutely phenomenal. It's like, if you really want to get into the RPG aspects and the depth of it, they are phenomenal books. So I would check
can I shout out a YouTuber real quick?
Of course, please do.
And I'm going to shout this out in the worst way, but you'll be able to find him. I don't know the exact name. I'm sorry. He's an artist, and he did the first 400 pages of his exploration through Elden Ring, and he's got it on YouTube.
Yes,
and it's a journal, dude. Yes. I'm telling you, above any art book in the universe, that would be the art book I would buy. It came up in the middle of the night for me, and I saw this pop up, and he was getting choked up as he was describing fighting the bosses, and he had drawings of every boss. It was great.
So if you don't know what Carrick is talking about, there's a guy who started Elden Ring, and he hand drew an old paper guide. He hand drew his way through the entire game and world. He
Every
drew the
character
bosses,
he met,
drew all the characters. He wrote down notes of lore, like you would if you were exploring the world in the 16th century. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he created this massive journal, and it took him 2 years. He just finished it a few weeks back.
He deserves to have I wish he would get that to a print a print on demand or something, because
I'd buy it immediately.
I would buy that immediately.
Yeah. I forget his name too. Someone please let us find it.
Shout out the YouTuber who had his goldfish beat the first couple bosses in Elden Ring.
That was a funny one too.
Yeah. Y-Files? That's the only guy with a goldfish I know.
I just love it. I don't know any YouTubers, to be honest. I think,
That's fair. You shouldn't, trust me.
Yeah.
We're a screwy bunch.
Damn it, I was looking for what you're talking about. Please, if someone can look is it Artsy's Artifacts? Is what Eric said is the name of that guy. But anyway, yes. Yeah, look that up. It is absolutely incredible. It is something special. So
it's great.
Anyway, did you think I used that word incorrectly or something?
No, you used it right. I just it's one of those things. You're right technically, but who the heck
old timey word?
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about Xbox real quick, just because we have Carrick on, and we touched on this previously, of course. But since we last talked a couple weeks ago, Xbox has come out. They had their follow-up with Spence and the crew talking about, what's going on and why they're moving some games over. We saw Grounded, Pentiment, Sea of Thieves, and Hi-Fi Rush going to PlayStation and Switch in various different forms. So Pentiment is out now. Hi-Fi Rush on PS5 March 19th. Grounded on PS5 and Switch April 16th. And Sea of Thieves on PS5 April 30th. So just wanted to get you guys, now that we know the actual details of what's happening, the explanation they gave, et cetera, et cetera. What are your thoughts on this? Do you really have any kind of strong feelings either way? Not necessarily about Xbox per se, but just about the idea of Xbox moving some of their already released first party games to what would be competing platforms.
Yeah, I've got thoughts. So I said last 2 weeks ago, and before the rumors were confirmed, that I thought this would be a larger undertaking from Xbox than just a couple games, that this is going to be something that they do a lot, and that I thought it was a good idea and actually could help the Xbox brand and would be a good thing for gamers. And that's ultimately what we want here in the games industry. I still think that this is sort of them testing the waters for this as a model.
Agree.
And I think that them doing it on multiple platforms and then selling them for $70 on PlayStation and giving it to you on Game Pass on Xbox is still a good idea. I think the 4 games they chose make a lot of sense. Sea of Thieves and Grounded, because they're ongoing games, let's call them, not necessarily live service in Grounded's case, but definitely ongoing, that would benefit from having larger player bases. And then Pentiment and Hi-Fi Rush, because they're small titles that more people should play, and they probably don't do as well when they're on the fairly limited platform, at least in the console space, that is Xbox, in terms of how many people it reaches. I hope that Xbox is successful in this. I hope that it happens more often. I think it's a winning strategy from Xbox to give it to their players on a subscription service and then sell it elsewhere. I don't think it takes anything away from Xbox, and I'm tired of people saying that it does. I thought the announcement was bad, the way that they did it, that whole meeting. But I also think that it was probably going to be a podcast episode that they thought not a lot of people would see. And then when the leak happened, it kind of became this blown up thing that people cared about, and that they didn't adjust their format for that. And it was kind of just like a boring, I saw people saying it was this could have been an email of a video, which I would say is true, but also I think their original plan was to have this kind of go under the radar and be a minor announcement, and so it kind of got away from them because leaks happened. So, yeah.
I don't as the name, but it's the worst band ever. But
Spence and the crew.
Spence and the crew.
Spence and the crew.
Yeah. I agree with you, Travis, that it got away from them, and that's why it happened this way. Because I think the 4 games announced, I really don't think move the needle too much for anybody. I know Xbox fans and Xbox content creators get excited about these things completely anyway, but without Starfield, Indiana Jones out there, I don't think this is the same kind of apocalyptic consternation that we saw on the internet for a little bit of time. So I think Hi-Fi Rush, everybody knew about at the top of the year. That makes a lot of sense. Again, it's a Bethesda game that was in production before Microsoft was the owner. Hi-Fi Rush is small, it's popular, and it makes a lot of sense to be sold on these various other systems. I agree completely on Grounded and Sea of Thieves. Pentiment never connected with me as much as it did other people. So that one is, again, a small game that you released because it didn't cost you that much to make, presumably, in the starting instance. And that's how you do experiments. That's how corporate America works. It's how corporate everywhere works. Is, all right, we want to see exactly what kind of effect this has on our platform and our ecosystem. So we take the ones that we think will be successful, but that we didn't expend a lot of capital in creating. And that's Hi-Fi Rush and Pentiment. And we see what happens. And yes, by the way, I say that because that does mean that Starfield and Indiana Jones and everything else you can think of could be on the table in the future. And this is the first step in figuring out what the numbers are. But also note that the last time they ran an experiment, it was holding IPs back to sell hardware and Game Pass subscriptions, which apparently they weren't happy with, and so they changed tack. So that can happen again. And no, you don't want to make those kinds of changes in strategy in public because it makes you look like you don't know what you're doing and people don't have faith in the direction that you're going. But I don't assume that just because they're experimenting with Pentiment and Hi-Fi Rush that necessarily means things are going to go in one way. But if they do sell, and I think they will, and I think they should, that Microsoft will be entertaining the bigger name releases in the future. And no, I don't think that takes away anything from the Xbox overall. I've always thought that more games being played by more people in more places is better overall. I do think the folks that have either invested their identity, which is a problem, or their livelihood in the success of the Xbox as a console need to be concerned about the fact that that may not be the business model for Microsoft forever and ever. Amen.
Yeah, I don't think forever, maybe, but I think that they very clearly still need a console in any time in the near or even far future, because you have to have a device to sell your subscription service on, and because that's the way you get the competitive advantage, and that's why you get people invested in the ecosystem. And I think it will continue to be there, by at least a part of their business model for the foreseeable future. But yeah, I agree on the people are putting a little too much stake into the competency or well-being of a corporation, and I just don't think that's ever a good idea or a healthy way to live.
Trust people, not institutions. I say that on my channel. I say it all over the place. But
and I say, don't trust people or institutions. Trust no one. Live in a cave. Start buying food, canned goods, and guns immediately. That's what I say on my YouTube channel, Thai Guy Survivalist.
Survivalist San Francisco.
Yeah,
Well,
that's it. Yeah.
I've said reasonable minds can differ. I've never quite claimed Travis as a reasonable mind, but hey, you know what? If that works for you in your life, that's fine with me. Do check
I was going to say, don't forget the R.
Yeah, I had I got the.
Do check out Hi-Fi Rush and Pentiment when they're available to you, and enjoy these various other games coming to your platform of choice if that's where you're finding them. But yeah, I think Microsoft, we knew for years and years and years, was moving to a service model, moving to a software approach to their platform, and this is the next great manifestation of that, even if it's just 4 smallish games.
Yeah. Carrick, where are you, man? I know you've kind of talked about this. What are your thoughts on what we've seen over the past few weeks and what's kind of unfolding before our eyes? You mentioned earlier you like chaos, you like to see change in the industry. This is another part of that. Where do you fall on it?
Yeah, I do love chaos. I actually think really good stuff comes out of it, especially in game systems where it's been a long time where the same competitors, that kind of stuff. But there's definitely a bunch of stuff that was weird about the entire situation. This is one of the few times I was quiet on Twitter, because normally I'm like teasing. This time I think the only joke I had was that tomorrow Phil Spencer is going to port himself to the PlayStation 5, because the rumors were so beyond belief and so dumb. There were hilarious ones that, like, for reasons, there are particular ones that I'm like, that's actually impossible for that one to go. But
it got out of control.
It got out of control. Their response was their response. A lot of people said they should have responded early. Well, you can't respond to everything. Any politician will tell you that. Anybody with even a small following will tell you have to figure out how you're going to respond. Otherwise, you'll be responded to every Tom, Dick, and Harry who posts or tweets. Additionally, apology tours are huge right now for leakers. They leak, doesn't turn out right. They do their apology tour, but still want you to subscribe to your podcast.
Man. It's exhausting.
It's like, subscribe to my podcast. I heard that fucking Dragon's Lair is coming out as a 4D time travel game. And you're just like, all right, whatever. And you find out it wasn't. So all of these things sort of began it. But once they announced, there been some people who already knew exactly what was going on. There was also the leaked data about what they had said prior to the podcast. So we all sort of knew exactly what the podcast was going to be. Yeah. I was more interested, to be honest, in the future hardware and holiday being shown that Sarah Bond stated, as well as next year some hardware that she says will be twice, the largest jump ever. Moving away from that and talking about the games, I think that those games make sense. They also make sense in a way, in the exact way Phil Spencer's talked about before, which is looking at titles that have grown to what you would consider to be their sort of their peak. They've done their thing. And you can move those and offer them to somebody else. And I'm in agreement with Travis. This is something day one I always believed they would do. Microsoft wants with no above anything else we're talking about for a consumer to have a choice between $60 and Game Pass. Microsoft's entire ecosystem is going to be built around that excellent choice. And for them, it is an excellent choice. It may not be for every gamer, but that is absolutely entrenched within even the people I talk to who aren't super high, people in other parts of it. that is like, boom, that's what we want. Those titles were great. I want to see Pentiment. I want to see Hi-Fi Rush. Hi-Fi Rush felt instantly like a game that was going to be on there was something about even its surprise launch that felt like that could be on everything. Also, I think that it was weird. I had to correct some people when the rumors were going out. It was PlayStation. And I had to go into multiple forums and go, it's not just PlayStation.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But here's the problem. Every single generation ever, and you can look this up, has always had two major competitors hate each other. They're not allowed to get along. That doesn't work for the competition. And Switch is not the same style of competitor. So what I do actually envision is this is most likely a good indicator of backwards compatibility on the Switch 2, unless Microsoft just wants to throw this into the 130 million plus Switch 1 owners, and you guys are screwed when the Switch 2 is announced. They don't have backwards. I just assume this is probably an indication of that. I also assume that Microsoft wants to double hit the handheld fairly heavily and see how their games can do on handhelds not owned by them, as well as what we've seen Microsoft do in the past, which is OEM, which was what they did with WMR. WMR was not created or built by Microsoft, sorry. It was created by your Lenovo's, your HPs, your blah, blah, blah. Microsoft has a very smart idea, which is I want LG and Samsung to get Game Pass on their app bar. I want a chip that I could throw into a TV that just plays Xbox games, and you sign up for that, or you get a free Game Pass for 6 months if you buy your Samsung TV. Barring all that, I think it was good data. I also believe that Microsoft will not be making instant choices, and especially XDev that I talked to, who was sort of involved in one of the games itself, it was more along the lines of they also want to see if it makes money, because if it does, that money will go back into them. They know Sony's making money, so there's a tit for tat. You don't want to give too much to them because you are giving them cash as well, but you want to give the games that you think you can get a good comparison to. You sort of want that comparison, that moment that a consumer sits and goes, what should I do? You don't want that instant do something. You want somebody to say, what should I do? And that's why I think the Switch will come up also much larger once the Switch 2 is announced as a platform. And then I would look for Microsoft. At least the rumors I'm hearing is the idea of Microsoft not just being the sole creator of a handheld, and possibly there being some kind of thing where we're seeing all these handheld makers. It's like, is there a EMO situation? And that rumor's popped up enough that I'm so, and Microsoft in the FTC documents was very, well, they weren't open. They didn't tell anybody. Somebody stole the documents, but it stated they were going to look at ARM and other manufacturers for things. And that makes sense when they're between, making hardware, they're going to look at other hardware. And that's Microsoft's
they want to
bailiwick.
get into the mobile space themselves after last time. Yeah.
Right. And it makes, and remember, the main guy, the guy above Phil,
Satya
Nadella.
He made it clear he felt their biggest mistake was leaving Windows, leaving Windows Phone. But what he didn't state was we want to make a Windows Phone. There is a huge difference between wanting to get back into the ecosystem, wanting to actually build hardware for that ecosystem.
Yes,
so there'll be that. They need to fix their cloud, which they also, during those FTC documents, they stated they hadn't done yet, because they need that cloud to be much better, especially with GeForce Now, so handedly trouncing it in all ways. But I think overall, as a thing, it was the games we expected. I saw footage of a game, but you see footage of a game, in a Discord video, and you're like, is that real? That is slightly big, that looked like it was being played on a dev kit. So it's like, there might be one or two others out there, not huge ones, certainly not a Starfield or something like that. I think this is a great start for them. And it also mimics a little bit about what Pete Hines was complaining about before he left in his leaked email, where he was very upset about Starfield being exclusive. And I wonder if that's sort of not only just top down, but other people in other companies are like, hey, if it's a multiplayer game or if it's whatever, we could have 3 times the multiplayer people playing this,
Yeah.
And by the way, the number of people I know who are playing the Xbox version of Sea of Thieves to play PS5 new owners is very high. And I wonder if Microsoft has data for everything. But their idea of current owners jumping back into the ecosystem to play with their friends who've always had a PS5 is not small. So that's the thing that I don't hear a lot of people talking about, is returning gamers on the same platform to play those new gamers. That's actually exciting to me. And it's a value benefit for people who own the system. That's
Oh,
amazing for them.
With cross progression, you could get Sea of Thieves on your Switch and then play it mobily now. I mean, the options there are great for those service games. So really excited for that.
I'm really excited for it, man.
And it means more people get to play Grounded, which was like my favorite game that year. So
Grounded is great.
I used to always joke with my Discord that MS had somehow released 3 or 4 of the most popular like mini MMO / service games that no one really kept tracking. And because Grounded was doing numbers. And one of the guys on the team that I had heard from was like, dude, we are ecstatic inside. And I was like, really? Because I don't hear about it. And then I saw, a tweet here or there where they're like, we've hit this many. And I'm all, oh.
Yeah, they announced 20 million this week.
Yeah, they announced 20 million. You're like, Microsoft somehow has that a couple of those games that aren't as big as you think, maybe because they own they own Minecraft. But Sea of Thieves and Grounded are not small games. They're massive.
Yeah, I mean, just Xbox first party alone, especially now you fold in Bethesda with ESO and Fallout 76 in those games, right? There are 150 million plus monthly active users, which is a crazy number. I mean, that's a lot of players playing their active games every month. So all really good commentary. Agree with nearly everything all of you guys said. I don't think there's a whole lot that I even had in my pocket to touch on outside of what you all just said. So I think it is going to be interesting. I do believe, as you guys rightly said, right, there's a lot of testing going on here, and figuring out the data and figuring out the financials and figuring out the aspects, the technical, everything that goes along with that. These are 4 games you would expect on paper to be used for this purpose, right? To feel out the water. And it's going to be interesting to see where it goes from here for sure. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
I don't think it's the end of the story, certainly.
No, it
Canary in
absolutely
the coal
is
mine.
not the end of the story. Yeah, it's not the end of the story.
Absolutely.
Let's get a couple of these super chats. We got Christopher Jetzer in the house. About our super chat. What are games like Antoria, Italian AA UE5 Souls game, and another Crab's Treasure coming out the same day and the other a few days later as Erd Tree? Okay.
I think they're asking what are those games going to do because
I thought it was
Elden going to eat their lunch. I don't know that there's a lot of overlap between another Crab's Treasure, but Antoria I'd probably be looking to move the game. I mean,
look at Horizon Forbidden West PC port. That's, I mean, Horizon Forbidden West devs might as well just give up on release days. I don't know what's going on with those.
Well, Elden Ring crushed.
I mean, this is getting stupid. Zelda. When
did you know it's happening again, Ains?
Yeah. Someone in our Discord mentioned it. I was like, I didn't even think about that, but man,
Rise of the Ronin, Dragon's Dogma, a bunch of those.
Every single time they release something.
Every single time.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's a cursed.
It's like
cursed
it's like the Titanfall thing where they release right with something else, but it's just been replicated no matter how many times they try to put something.
No kidding. Yeah. Chris, thank you for the super chat. Go ahead.
I know another Crab's Treasure. I didn't know Antoria, so
I have not heard of Antoria either. You're talking AA Souls game. You're in my wheelhouse, so I will definitely take a look.
Not on that day. You're not.
No, correct. So perfect
He's
example.
Playing
Move
the
your
AAA
game.
Souls game.
Move your game.
Yeah, Antoria looks interesting.
It's Quad A, Hogue. Thank you.
That's right. Skull and Bones player here. I know the 4th A is for aquatic.
I don't know why Microsoft and Ubisoft thought that they could say that. Microsoft stated it in the past as well. I don't know why they thought Quad A was,
it was because of their studio, The Initiative, which they said it as like, we're setting
further
up to
Quad A
the first. What's weird is it's always said by like a business person in the industry who's not a game developer who seems to be equating the A's with how much money it costs them.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is not the way you want to, because if that's the case, then like GTA 6 is probably the actual
Star Citizen is 5A.
And here's the thing. Every company needs like a Steve sitting inside. And whenever anybody says something stupid, you hire Steve. He's a no-name dude who's just sitting down and you're like, Steve, tell him no matter what he says. Make him fight through his idea. I'm going to say 4A. And Steve would just be like, no, that's a suit. No, S tier, maybe, do we change to like RPG tiering and say S? No, we don't. You don't need to do that. Travis is right though. It is different words used that when they're used, they're even more confusing because they are talking about the investors and the cash and what's put in. They're not talking
every
about
A being added is because the finance people are screaming. It's
Another accountant, another accountant, another accountant, another accountant. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like just a person's name under it. Jeremy will be the first one, and that's how many A's. They're like, we need 4 accountants for this new game.
Oh man, that's good. We have a Papa Hogue sighting. 1999 super chat from Papa Hogue. Great Bitcast broadcast today. I will actually try Elden Ring.
Oh,
Thank
good
you, Papa
Lord.
Hogue.
Dad.
Don't listen to your son. I'm muting him.
Some Twitch
I'm muting him.
I'm just trying to save him.
I didn't actually mute him, but no. You go, Papa Hogue. Get past Limgrave and show your son how it's done, my friend. I appreciate it.
I would love it if Thomas Hogue beat Elden Ring before.
That would be amazing.
I want, I want it to be a race. Actually, I want them to have a runoff against one another, and I
would create a handwritten journal of his adventure for that reason.
So folks who know me know that my dad is who got me into video games, and we played a long time on the oldest systems and every system in the 90s. We had a 3DO, a CDI, that kind of thing. But for a long time, my dad has asked me for video game recommendations that avoid Twitch needs, that avoid action gameplay, because he's just not loving that kind of thing. So I think Elden Ring might be the wrong entry point for him. But hey, you know what?
No.
Good luck, Dad.
Do it, Thomas. Tommy boy. A goldfish did it. So can you.
Oh man. CBS predicts Michigan football returns to the playoffs again this year and will face Ohio State, once again becoming national champions. Go Blue.
It is tough to be the best.
I say that about Elden Ring all the time, you know.
We love you, Buckeyes.
Yeah, we never got to debrief about the Super Bowl, by the way. That happened also over the break. So rip.
Yes, sorry about that, Travis.
Yeah, that was something.
Was this the only second? Was this the second Super Bowl? Only second to go into overtime?
It was the second one overtime ever,
it was the one Super Bowl. I was like,
it was a great game.
Probably won't be. I know. I was just like, I won't go in. And then I was reading my tablet while putting a Lego thing together. I was like, oh my God. You know,
I'd argue it was a fairly terrible game with a close ending, but I do feel bad for you.
That was a fun game.
Wow. It started slow, but I thought it got really good.
The first two and a half quarters, I was like, this is not even good football.
Wow. I thought it was good.
But yes, as you can imagine,
Niners are going to win next year. I'm calling it.
I was going to say, as you can imagine, everyone went nuts here. It's Sia.
Well, we saw them go nuts on CNN.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry, I tried really hard not to make jokes about that in the chat, but you know how you go.
What did I say, Travis? No shooting jokes.
I know. I'm trying. I'm just out here doing my best.
But anyway, yes. Thank you, Papa Hogue. Appreciate you. If you need any help with Elden Ring, I'm a DM away. Hit me up. I'm ready to help you get through this. So
I can set you up with that connection, Dad, if you need it. But they'll just be like, here are all the bosses dead before you.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, moving on. Halo series. Any of you checked this out yet? I caught up with it on Friday. Has anyone watched this but me?
I read the Paul Tassi review of The Fall of Reach. That is the closest I have gotten to the series.
Well, one, I'm sorry. And two,
Paul Tassi's cool.
I don't mind Paul.
I have nothing against Paul. I'm just saying. Carrick, are you interested in this show at all? You a Halo fan? I don't actually know the background here.
I'm interested. My only interest is I love video games. So the more of these shows that come out, and even if they don't, perform well for those people, as long as more people are interested, we get our Fallout TV show and stuff like that.
Sure.
So I'm interested in that. What I saw of the Halo mini series that came out, the original one, actually had the real Master Chief and not this Joe Blow dude from the series. But what was it called? Like what was the original mini series called?
Well, you had
the Fall of
Nightfall.
Was it Nightfall?
Well, no. Nightfall was the second one. There was Forward Unto Dawn.
Forward Unto Dawn.
The Nightfall.
Yeah,
the one. With
so there was the good one, and then
Nightfall was after. Nightfall was bad. Forward Unto Dawn was good.
Yeah, Forward Unto Dawn was good. So it's okay. It's like I don't care at all about it, but I'm excited to see if it does well, because I would like to see other games that I'm interested in their stories having, getting translated to other stuff. I'm always a huge fan of that, because I'll watch a show if it's based on a video game just to check out. The first couple episodes of that were terrible. Man.
Oh, you
Yes.
should see the later episodes of the first season. They
I
were so bad they went back around to being interesting. Eric, I honestly, you should finish that season because it is a yeah. If you like bad movies, that show is hilariously bad. The first season,
Yeah,
great.
it is rough. It is rough.
I dropped out,
Yeah,
so I can't comment.
Yeah, I mean it didn't improve a whole lot, Hogue, honestly. Season 1's bad. Season 2, so it's 4 episodes in if you're not aware now, and basically it is a little darker this season. Episode 4 was starting to show the fall of Reach. I don't know if they're done with it, of course, because episode 4 just happened. I did catch up with it on Friday. It's okay. It is better than season 1. Take that as you will. That may not hold much weight for you. But it has some cool moments. It definitely has a lot more homages to the game and the actual lore. There's a lot of commentary and things that tie back to important things in Halo, which is better than the first season.
And Klaus from the originals is in it, right? Klaus, he's the like blonde. He looks like a bad guy in the trailers I'm seeing. He said it's hard. God, I can't remember his name.
He might be the guy who's playing the head of Oni.
I feel like we're being tested on whether we've seen the originals or not.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
True,
I know who you mean. I forget his name.
I like
in the show,
D&D, so I always watch the weird shows.
Yeah, he's the head of Oni.
Okay, so he's in it. Cool.
Yes, yeah, and he plays a big role. But it is
Nicholas Michelson. Nicholas Michelson is his name.
Okay. But there's still some just odd things. Like they show, they're out of their suits again, and they show Chief fighting an elite out of his suit, and he's like superhero fighting the elite out of his suit, and I'm like, that's just not how that works. That's not
as like fully out of a suit. Like is he cheap?
Fully out of a suit as a human.
Yeah. No, he's in a t-shirt.
Oh,
he's not fully.
The show keeps going downhill, bro. It's like
he's not cheeks.
Come on.
But like stuff like that, I'm watching it. I'm like, no, that's not.
I thought the second season he was going to be fully nude the whole season.
I got to tell you, Ains, I really don't love that actor. And
that gives a whole new idea to the game, to the weapon, the Needler. Now that I think about it, man,
and a super combined.
Yeah, coming from outside in, I don't love some of the quotes he's given. I understand that
Pablo, yeah,
actors like to have their faces seen and whatnot, but I just think that it forces the show into some weird situations.
Right.
It does. It does. And I think episode 4 with Reach shows that. Like, again, there's some good aspects of it, but there's some other aspects where it's like, come on, what are we doing here? Like, you had such an opportunity to show this in a way that really would have delighted not only people who don't know Halo, right, but people who do, obviously, like me. And you kind of just flubbed it a bit, and it's just frustrating. I don't know. But
if he hangs dong later in the season, I'll catch up. I'll catch up with it. Okay, you gotta let me know.
We got some good references in this episode.
Video that has been on my channel.
Oh, glad we could do it for you, Hogue. We're here to help.
Thank you, Ains. It's all good.
We're here to help. But anyway, that's that. Well, guys, it's been a good episode. Well, guys, it's been a good episode coming back. Are there any other points you want to touch on before we start to wrap things up?
I think there's only one last one, and it's just me complaining about Travis again.
Oh, yeah. I want to hear the complaint.
Oh, here we go.
So Travis gave out 2 7s in the last couple of weeks, both of which have resonated with me a lot more than Travis would have suggested. Mm-hmm. So on this particular point, I would just like to say Travis is wrong. Banishers is a great game. It is fantastic. However much you like crevices or don't like crevices, it really hits some nice dramatic.
You did that one. That was you. Okay. This is on your channel, sir.
What did I do?
Okay. No, he was talking about actual crevices. He wasn't talking. You're gross.
Just go with it. I know, just go with it.
So, if you're at all interested in a well-told, well-paced ghost story with mystery elements, please don't skip Banishers because Travis gave it a 7.
Yeah, so just to be clear, a 7 is not a recommendation that you pass on it. 7 at IGN means good and that you should play it. However, if you're somebody who enjoys your time and likes the games to be well paced, it does not have great pacing at many opportunities, and also the combat isn't great.
The combat is not great. Don't go to it for your action game fix.
So yeah, if you're expecting it to be kind of God of War-esque, it is a better story than God of War, in my humble opinion. I love the investigation. I love the investigation system a lot. But I have you can read my review. I think a 7 was the correct one on that.
You can read his review, and I'm just being obstinate with Travis. I actually think 7 again is about right for IGN's grading system. But like we say here, there are a lot of 7s that really resonate with people. 7s are often where the interesting stuff lives. And Banishers is one of those interesting 7s. So if you're at all interested in a ghost story that's set in the New World at about the time of colonization and some of the vibes that you can get from that, it is a well-told story that doesn't have great combat gameplay, but do check it out because it's a really interesting product, I think.
I'm really happy to hear you played that game because I remember after I finished it, I was like, I feel like Hogue would like this game a lot. So yeah,
I'm just happy to see more people play it because it's fantastic. I mean, the combat is absolutely not great shakes, but the story writing and the morality, the weight, the weird feeling of duality that you get morally, where if you help a character that no one can see, you look like a jackass in front of everybody because you're alone, or you help everybody and you get to watch this person die again, which is it's just something that I just don't know if a lot of people would have been able to handle well in their writing. And Don't Nod, once again, they nailed it.
Yeah, one of the things I was going to add was that it's a really interesting exploration of grief that I think is handled in video games more interestingly than it would have been in passive entertainment. So one of the things Travis and I talk about a lot is, why is this a game and not a movie or a TV show? And Banishers kind of tends, especially early on, where you think this would have been a better Netflix series since I'm just slashing at ghosts as my action stop. But I do think that having those choices and being a part of those investigations and living in this world plays better as an active piece of entertainment than a passive one. And so I thoroughly recommend Banishers.
It makes every button press during the end of the investigation. It made me pause, and I'm known to be like super unemotional, but I'd go banish up. Wait. Okay. Ascend. Wait. And I would walk around the house.
What ending did you get? Did you banish,
I got all 5. I got all 5. I went back and played all 5. Yeah. Whenever I like Don't Nod is sort of my jam. Like a lot of their games just happen to, I find their writing and the end results being really good. But I did get the first one I believe I got where I messed up because I did let some people get saved because I'd initially been like, I'm bloodthirsty anyway. So I'm like, hell yeah, I'll jump in there. But then somebody tell you a sad story. And I'll admit, like, they're good enough writers. So I was like, oh, damn. Like, that does suck. I'll sneak one through. And you can't. That game, you can't sneak many.
Oh, you have to absorb every single person?
God, you pretty much do. I think they said you might be able to get by one, but I did more than one, maybe 3, and I definitely did not get that ending. So I was like,
part of my problem with that game is the decision making is a little oversimplicated. Like it's
Sith and Jedi.
It's basically like you either have to banish them or ascend them, which are kind of just different flavors of the same thing, or you have to just be a dick and kill them. And there were some times where I was like, well, I want to do both. This person's an asshole, so they should get killed, but also I want to banish the ghost too, because the ghost is also not a good guy, and they kind of just make you pick a side. And I feel like most of the decisions I made in that game were about the ending I wanted, which is weird. It's like, it's
very Bioshocky that way.
Yeah.
So, and I found myself, the more decisions I made was about the ending I had originally chosen, but that I couldn't get to because of the weirdness during the investigations. So I sort of got
find yourself
mini-maxed
a little
down.
bit. Are you a little bit misanthropic, Travis? You want to murder everyone?
I mean, there were some where I wanted to kill both of them, and then there were some where it was actually hard, where it was like, okay, well, but the problem was I felt like I wasn't making the decision based on the scenario. I was making
you were making it
because I was like, well, I have to get the ending that I want, and so that's sort of my problem with that decision tree.
I always RP story games like that the first run.
Yeah. So then you're going to end up with like a a weird ending.
You're
Or,
going to
you know,
end up,
yeah.
exactly, Travis is right. You're going to end up with the meandering ending. That's like, you did some stuff, but hey, you didn't really make any choices that made any sense. Bye. You're like, oh,
Yeah,
shit. Because
Have
there are
fun
some
doing-
short endings there.
Yeah, have fun being more efficient next run. You
Yeah.
move-
Yeah.
exactly.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm glad you played that game, Hogue, and I think more people should play it because I was.
I want to play it. I haven't yet.
I kind of already forgot I reviewed that game. So yeah, I'm glad you.
I think we gave it. I think we gave it an 8. I believe I'd have to go back and look. Too many.
The Metacritic is higher than my review score. I was.
The Metacritic is great for them,
Yeah.
but the concurrent, I don't even like to say. I hate talking about concurrent players. So
I
it's
know.
now such a thing, but it wasn't great, which makes me worry about the sales because Don't Not also had Requiem, which came out a couple Reverie or whatever that came out. It was a point and click one.
Yes.
It was and that one, even my review views were hugely low. Like even the people when I was reviewing it for my channel were like, "What is this game?" So I don't want Don't Nod to have too many of those. I want them to
check out Banishers, people, especially if you like Vampire. It's part of the Vampire lineage on Don't
It
Nod.
is, yeah.
Oh,
it's also
cool.
just a really cool new IP, which we should all support new IPs, please. It's not a sequel, which is great. There should be more of that.
Yeah, we've talked on the show multiple times now about these, types of interesting games in that vein. So
the AA space is amazing. Even though I have no issue with AAA space, quadruple if somebody makes one. But the AA space, like the new Outcast looks fantastic. I got to hands-on preview that a couple months ago, and like that's a huge for me. That's I hope it nails it. All the AA space is great sometimes. I mean, Vampire was AA space, and that game was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Just Capri Sun and everybody in that world was amazing. It was so good.
Good stuff.
Banishers definitely feels like a Vampire kind of sequel. Not in story. It's a different game entirely, but it's that lineage of games.
Cool. Very cool. Yeah, I'll definitely get to that. Let me catch up on these Butterballs. Watch it be a Chiefs three-peat. He's already calling out your 49ers.
I don't want to watch it
to
be a Chiefs three-peat. No, my Lions will have more skilled players to take the 49ers and not lose to them by 17 or more in the second half.
Will they now? It is the Lions you're talking about, right?
Yes. The Lions are here to stay now.
Oh, okay. All right. Butterball, thank you. And shout out to WW with 5 season gaming memberships. Appreciate you, Debbie. You've been very generous to everyone. Thank you so much. All right. Let's go ahead and wrap this bad boy up. So, Carrick, you've been awesome, man. I'm glad we finally got you on a Bitcast episode.
Thanks for being flexible. I'm sorry.
You don't have to be sorry about anything, man. I know you create an awful lot of content and reviews and spend a lot of time on that stuff. So I completely understand. Appreciate you coming on. Always fun chatting with you. Every time I catch up with you, it's a good time. So appreciate it.
Definitely.
Why don't you go ahead and obviously his information is in the description, but go ahead and shout out anything you'd like to shout out, man, and where they can find you.
Jeremy Penter on Twitter, ACG or Angry Centaur Gaming, the old name that I used to have it pretty much everywhere else. But I'm going to shout out somebody.
I did not know that's what it stood for. That's funny.
Yeah, it was a D&D name. I wasn't doing video games at the time. But I want to shout out somebody else. If you guys get a chance and you like to watch some really in-depth, incredible write-ups on games that aren't really reviews, they're not really analysis, they're just incredible write-ups, writing on games. One of the best YouTube channels. I think I'm subscribed to 3 YouTube channels now, and he's one of them. If you guys get a chance, it's writing on games. Breaks down videos, breaks down levels, and his stuff is embarrassingly good. One of the first times I've ever heard somebody where I'm like, well, I'm done. Time for me to go, become a mechanic or do some more logging. So, I want to shout out somebody else. He's incredible. You guys should check him out.
That's very cool. Okay. Writing on games. I'll remember that. I'll check that out. Before I forget, too, because you brought up the Elden Ring guy, I put the guy's name. I forget it. I put it in our chat, and now I forget it. I don't have it up anymore. But I wanted to show. I downloaded a couple because if you just look up Elden Ring hand-drawn journal, just Google that. You'll find it. It comes up on Reddit. It comes up everywhere. But these are a few examples of his early pages when he was first doing them. So this is what he started to do as he went through the game. And he wrote it. He wrote it like an old, kind of, like I said, like an old RPG journal. And he drew all the characters and he drew little like anecdotes and, all these big things as through the entire game. And it is just absolutely incredible to see. So definitely check it out. It is worth checking out. So
that is very cool.
It is. It's amazing. It really is. On the SG side, reviews. We've talked about a lot of reviews. We've got a lot of reviews going on. I know that Zach also checked out Enshrouded, which I believe is in early access right now on Steam, and a lot of people really liking that. So we've got an article going up on that tomorrow. I've got another statue, which will shock everyone, I'm sure, but I've got a Nathan Drake Prime 1 statue video going up. It's been waiting on that one a while. It looks very cool. So I'll be putting that video up. Follow up on my Xbox article. And then I wanted to shout out to Extra Life, the Children's Mercy group locally who I play for, sent me this hoodie, and we're going to do a Halo community stream tonight for my Extra Life. So
Nice.
Stay tuned for that. Check it out. We're going to do like big team battle. Anyone can jump in, join the team, obviously, until we fill up. And we'll have some fun with it. So look for that tonight on Twitch. I'll hit it up on Twitter later. As to what time, I don't know what time we're going to start yet, but it'll be this evening. So, all right, Travis, what you got?
You can read my reviews of Banishers, of Skull and Bones. I've done a few reviews this year. I've got some previews coming up I can't talk about, but be on the lookout for that.
Always.
And then always. And then my next reviews are the Outlast Trials 1.0, which is coming out on March 5th. So my review will be on March 4th.
It was fun, even in preview. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I gave it a 7 in its early access version, and now we've got the 1.0. So we'll see how that turns out. That's all I can say for now. And then my next review after that is the new South Park game. So I'll be playing that next. Which will be fun.
You're the right person for it.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
He meant that as an insult, in case anybody was wondering. He doesn't like South Park, so he's like, "You're the right person for it, you jackass." Yeah, that was the subtext.
Yeah, I heard it.
You are misanthropic. There was no subtext. You're the comedy guy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're right. You're right.
Hogue, what you got, man?
Well, I already talked about Free Stars, so if you're watching this, you should have already downloaded it for free from Steam. But do that now if you haven't already. And I talked about
Foam Stars?
Free Stars. We talked about Balatro, but the very last thing I wanted to mention, which is a game that I was looking forward to, but rocketed up my charts after I played the demo this last week, is a game called Unicorn Overlord. And I highly recommend checking it out if you like strategy games at all. It reminds me of the old Ogre Battle game from the N64, if that's helpful to you at all. But it's this strategy game from Vanillaware, who most recently made 13 Sentinels, but has made a lot of games in this kind of graphic style. Very well done, very high-end 2D graphics. And the tactics in battle are basically that each of your people has a kind of program for the talents that they use when they swing their sword, when they heal somebody, that is all of a series of if-then statements. So that when you assemble your crew, your specific group, you're assembling a way that they're going to battle other groups. And it's really smartly done that it emphasizes strategy over tactics. It is gorgeous. And I am very much looking forward to it. I believe it comes out in the next couple weeks. But the demo is available now on the Switch is where I played it. It might be available other places as well. Unicorn Overlord. Check it out. I'm very excited about it. I also mentioned that I was on Last Stand Media on Summon Sign. You can check that out over there. I will be posting that on my channel at Hogue Law on YouTube. I have not done any law videos or virtual legalities of late because the Summon Sign was like 4 hours long, and I'm trying to do another video with some other folks, and I'm paying more attention to other channels than my own and still trying to figure out where my energy level is any given day. So with that all said, if you do like talking about the Michigan Wolverines, video games, and more, check me out on YouTube or on Twitter at Hogue Law, and check out Unicorn Overlord, Balatro, and Free Stars for my random games Hogue notes of the week.
Well done, my friend. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get out of here. Carrick, thanks again, man. Appreciate you.
Hopefully thank you very much. I appreciate you guys. Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
All right, everyone, have a good week. We promise we'll try not to take weeks off or months off anymore. We'll see. I blame Hogue for that one, even though I wasn't here. It's his fault somehow, I'm sure. So until next week, Dan will be back, and we'll see what happens this week of crazy game news. Until then, enjoy your games, play Balatro. Until then.